Yet another one of those weeks where there was almost no vPub, but for a different reason this time around. I sensed the wonderful, sparkling, fantastic, vivid, amazing weekend that brought everyone to Glasgow for the festival weekend. Since then, I've had the inevitable sniffles and the head cold. Um, I'm feeling okay. I'm a little bit bunged up inside my own head. I'm not smelling whiskey quite well. I'm good. Tasting it okay. And I there's any excuse for the vPub not to go ahead. So just a little shuffle of the topics to talk about. So we won't be kind of assessing whiskey. We won't be kind of uncorking and giving our first impressions. Instead, what I'll do is I'll switch around and I'll do a little bit of a retrospective and share all the whiskies that we shared over the course of the weekend. Not all of them, some highlights perhaps. And I'll give you my takeaways from the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. There's lots to talk about, things that we got up to, but I think there's quite interesting dynamics that played out in front of us that's interesting for everyone in whiskey, whether you were here for the weekend or not. So that's the plan for tonight. Let's see how we go on. I'm looking forward to it as always, and I'll see you all in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. It's wonderful to see so many of you in. I suspect that there's going to be quite a few tonight that's going to be abstaining from whiskey a wee bit. Maybe some of you have got the same kind of head cold and sniffles and things that I have. I hope you don't. Hope you're all feeling strong and powerful, regardless of whether you made it to Glasgow for the last weekend of whiskey celebrations. It was wonderful, and I think it's nice that we get a wee bit of a chance to just kind of enjoy the remainder of the glow while it still exists. We have to be very, very mindful that it was a small, small percentage of our community that managed to make it to Scotland for all the celebrations over the course of the 3 days or more. Lots of you had lots of other things, extracurricular things outside of whiskey. But even inside whiskey, you had tours and events and other things to go to. And it was amazing to see everybody in the same place at the same time. But for so many of you, maybe you didn't get to go this year, or maybe you've never been before. And for those of you, I would say that I am going to try my very best to focus on how what happened in Glasgow over the weekend has relevance for all of us in the community, regardless of whether you were here or not, because of the whiskies that we shared, because of the things that we witnessed, how whiskey is literally changing in front of our eyes, but also the possibilities for future for you. To potentially come to Glasgow, come to the Leith Independent Spirits Festival, or manage to just get involved in one of these kind of community experiences where we take the virtual world and we render it real. There's just nothing better. It's fabulous. It's life affirming. It makes you feel positive about the human condition, even if you end up with a wee bit of a head cold after it. What I'm going to do tonight is I'll take you through the Friday event and share with you those under-the-table secret whiskies that nobody knew what was going to be poured before the Friday event. Nobody knew until they turned up and sat down and took their place and had each dram introduced. I'll take you through what we shared. I've actually got some of it here. There were some dregs and dribbles left behind. I didn't manage to get them all. Some of them were quite popular, and they were any dregs or dribbles that were left were kind of squirreled away, understandably so. And then we can move on to the festival itself and how Glasgow Whisky Festival in 2025, for me, even in the space of a year since last year, I see quite a shift happening in whiskey. And it's really nice to see. It's really nice it's a very, very positive thing for us as a community. And we can talk a wee bit about that. And then I can kind of finish talking about the condition of our community, the wonderful thing that we enjoyed when we all got together on the Sunday for the Sunday event, and take you through some of my highlight whiskies and things and moments that I thought were quite special. I hope that's interesting enough for everyone. This vPub was going to be something that focused a little bit on grain, not just barley, but grain in general. And it may be that that simply bumps to next week, but there's a few things in the hopper. And listen, it doesn't matter. I don't think you really care too much about the topics, right? Me trying to make content evergreen. I don't think tonight will be a particular evergreen vPub, but it's much better than me just phoning in sick. It's better that I just do a phone-in vPub instead, right? That I'm here with you hanging out and getting our little bit of whiskey time on a Thursday night, even if some of us have decided after the weekend that we've had quite enough whiskey for a little while, thanks. Anyway, that's what we're going to chat about tonight. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to hanging out with you guys. I did not have enough of you over the weekend. Our community is resplendent. I absolutely love it. Stevie O is celebrating being a member of Barflies for 18 months, saying seems like years. And James DeJulio, good to see you, buddy, saying just a punter waiting to visit Scotland. James, you've been over here multiple times, my friend. It's actually quite a surprise to think that you weren't there this last weekend, right? So familiar is your face on these shores. And my pal Stevie O has become a very, very familiar face over recent events as well. Thank you both for your support. The biggest thing about the weekend that has just passed, and the thing that I was nervous about, if I'm honest, is that all the events that we've had in the past have managed to maintain a sense of closeness, community. You might even suggest intimacy. You know, the events have never got so big that they've felt kind of distant or cold. They've always felt kind of part of what we do here every week. It's just felt like a real life extension of that. And I think that my nervousness of upgrading to significantly upgrading the Friday event and the Sunday event in terms of numbers, scale of venue, all of that kind of thing, meant that I was worried that it might lose a wee bit of that intimacy, that kind of community feel. But I forget about two things. I forget about whiskey and how it takes care of us. And I forget about you guys and how amazing that you all are. And, you know, just lay on the space. You guys will just turn up and you'll have a ball regardless. And that's exactly what you did. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I hope you can hear me okay and my voice is okay. I'm sure it is. I do have the sniffles. If there's no, I hope if I get a sneezing fit or a coughing fit or whatever, I'll just put up, I've got a wee hold screen here somewhere. I better get that ready actually, just in case I need to lean on it. So it would probably be something like this that I would pop on and I'd drop it in the background. And then, you know, I've had to disappear for a nose cleanup or a sneeze or a cough or something. But I'm feeling fine, so we should be able to get through it. Okay, that said, let's do what we always do. Let's jump into the lounge. Let's jump into the vPub lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Welcome, everyone. Hope your Thursday night is fabulous. Gregor is here. Time for a dram. He's saying, howdy, barflies. Just landing on US soil now. What a blast we all had. We'll be trading off these memories and laughs for quite some time. Gregor, it was wonderful to have you here. It was wonderful to have you in such top form as well. What a brilliant energy you are, buddy. I loved hanging out with you for a wee bit of a decompress on Tuesday night as well. It was great fun. Herbin is celebrating being a member of Barfly for 50 months, saying it was unforgettable. It was, Herbin. I'm glad you enjoyed it, buddy. You managed to pack a lot into the time that you were here as well, didn't you? And Danny Hebbington, my pal who didn't make it this time around, he's saying, evening, Roy, just home yesterday. After 6 weeks, not seen the Oswes results video yet. No spoilers, please. First dram of your 1770 tonight. I'm going to make a prediction, Danny. That first dram of the 1770 is going to be the worst dram you're going to have from that bottle. I was struck how much that affected me, how much I grew to love it more and more each time, to the point that I'm already a bottle and a half of that through now. But I was also struck by speaking to other people, how they've fallen in love with it over the course of a few drams. It's almost one of those things that you need to spend a little time with to understand better. I'm so glad that you're enjoying it, buddy. and it's nice to have you here. No spoilers for the Oswas for you, right enough. Graham Young is here. Good to see you, Graham. You never made it this year. You have in the past. He's saying hello, Aqvavitae. Cheers and thanks for the vPub tonight. You're very welcome, Graham. It's wonderful to have you in. Fernando saying evening, Roy. Aqvavitae. Evening, Barflies. How's everyone? Jerry Miller is saying good evening, Roy. Thanks for organising such a great weekend. Jerry, it was amazing to welcome you in Glasgow. The one Glasgow and Warner is saying cheers, everyone from Miami. Aqvavitae. I wish I could have been there. I know you do, Warner. We've managed to welcome you in the past, and it won't be too long before we do so again, my friend. Look after yourself out there in Florida, buddy. Max Kreitner is saying, great that you opened the vPub for us tonight. The most photographed man of Scotland last weekend. There were, you've not even seen half of it yet because we've obviously got Gordon, who's a keen photographer. Then there's the other Gordon Burniston, and I had a wee deal with him. I've still to settle my end of the arrangement with him, but in order to kind of photograph the event on the Sunday. And then Gordon Fraser was just going around with a camera and photographing things in general. So I think it's going to be really, really nice to be able to share all the images with everyone. It's forced me to go in and kind of dust off the Aqvavitae.com site that hasn't really been touched in years. Not since COVID, I would suggest. But I've built a galleries page there. And over the course of the coming days, as more photos tumble in, I'll add more galleries to that page and I'll update everyone so that they can see lots of the virtual world rendered real. It's fantastic. Drinks Whiskey scene evening all. Hope you're all keeping well, or at least dosed up on Lemsip. I suspect there's a bit of a theme. We don't know where ground zero is for that or who patient number one was. But I think we're all struggling with it a wee bit, David. I hope you're well, buddy. Hope you're well. Loved having you and Ben and Viresh joining us on the Sunday as well. I hope you had as much fun as we did welcoming you. Gordon Fraser is saying, head cold, but drinking a wee AD10. Not enough whiskey yet, Aqvavitae. Whiskey usually helps keep these things at bay, right? Alistair McPhail is saying, good evening, good morning, afternoon, everyone, Aqvavitae. Hope you're all well. I'm doing okay, Alistair, and I hope you are too. Brilliant to welcome you in Glasgow over the weekend, buddy. I hope you're comfortable again. Helen Hamish is saying, Aqvavitae, greetings from Inverness. So sorry I didn't make it to Hampden, but been a great few weeks of welcoming barflies to the Highlands. Hamish, it's wonderful to welcome you in tonight, buddy, and I know that we'll have you in Glasgow before too long. Julian Rickman is saying, evening, Roy, Aqvavitae, evening, barflies. Looking forward to hearing from the Glasgow shenanigans. Roll on Leith in March. Julian, I look forward to seeing you there. Craig Dollar is saying, hello, folks. Hello, Aqvavitae. Abstinence for me until tomorrow, maybe. I had a couple of drinks on Tuesday night. I was out with Gregor. Nothing last night. I don't think I had anything on Monday night. So yeah, I mean, I didn't feel. I think because I'm too busy talking and too busy maybe hosting and things like that, I didn't really feel at any point like I'd maybe had too much. So yeah, I know what festivals are like. We can all feel like we've overdone things a little bit. That's fine. Mirko was here. Of course you were, buddy. I hope you enjoyed it. You seemed to be very happy throughout the entire weekend, celebrating being a member for 21 months. And he's saying, hi, Roy, thanks for the wonderful time in Glasgow. Mirko, you're very welcome. Thanks for supporting me as a barfly and multifaceted. I think that's Mark. Mark couldn't make Glasgow Whisky Festival, but looking forward to Campbelltown next week. Cheers, Roy and barflies. You're going to have an absolute blast down there. I hope the weather clears up for you, buddy, because it's been dire. It's biblical rain here for a couple of days now. Hellswood is saying it. Aqvavitae Andy is still gloating. Andy Widdowson, he knocked out the park at the blind tasting, and he even stood up to take a sniper hit as well and gamble, and he was absolutely spot on. The guy did very, very well. Helena, it's just something you're going to have to put up with a little bit until you do as well as that. The man did really well, and he deserves it. There was a few people, Arnie and cousin Kevin, the team at Stefan Novak's team. There were only one error away. Listen, I'll talk a wee bit about that when we get to talk about that a wee bit later. It was nice to have you. Both of you, Helen and Andy. Londer is saying, looking good with your M&S fashion catalogue look on Aqvavitae photos. Did you have a wee look through the images online? Fantastic. They were all candid, of course, or to the best of my knowledge, they were all candid. Barry Coleman is saying, glad everyone had a great time. Someday I hope to make it. One day we hope to welcome you there, Barry. And Sandro is saying, delighted you're here tonight. Yes, share the weekend events with us all. Sandro, that means a lot, because even though you weren't involved, you're not coming at this from a feeling of FOMO. You're coming at it with wanting to join in the community celebrations. Michael Wood is saying, does this evening's vPub stand for a virus pub? It's not something strong, as Mr. Trump may have suggested some years ago. There might be a bit of a theme there, Michael. Tom Freeney is saying, even Aqvavitae, great to meet you and many, many barflies over the weekend. Tom, I know we've met a few times in the past, but you seemed to be a bit of a happy bunny, and it was great to have you. Its chats jumped right to the bottom. Let me scroll back up. Klaus is saying, evening everyone, kind of wasn't sure whether to join tonight Aqvavitae for fear of acute jealousy, but my interest got the better of me. I don't want to have anyone feeling jealous. What we managed to do was kind of take this global community that we have and representatives from all over the world for 2025 and smash them together in just a fantastic celebration of what we enjoy here every week. But a celebration of whiskey in general, and people, and seeing people as people, and not caring about all the other rubbish that goes on in our daily lives, right? Just for a little while, a pocket of time. Big Pour is here. Good to see you, evening, Roy. What a weekend was had by all. I came home with a cold too, but being part of the winning tasting team has made up for it, of course. Big Pour is our pal, Neil Laverty. Good to see you, buddy. Ryan Sutherland is here. Aqvavitae. Flu is rife at the moment. Luckily, it only hit me for 2 days and I was back up and going at full speed again. That's because of the vigour and the youth that you possess, Ryan. I'm a wee bit jealous because mine started to come on Monday into Tuesday, and it's kind of steadily got a wee bit worse. I hope it doesn't develop into anything close to flu. And this saying, fab weekend, and great to meet those whiskey folk fortunate enough to participate. You get well soon. Thank you, and thanks for participating in all of it. And thanks for your support, buddy. Mike Cull was there as well. Good to see you, Mike. Evening, Roy. Big up to you and your team of helpers for organising an amazing weekend. Really was, Mike, and it was brilliant to have you here. Thank you very much for your generous donation as well. I hope we welcome you in future events. And Lee McDonald's saying, good to finally meet you, albeit in the car park. Lee, I think were you maybe going into the second session? It's just a blur for me. I feel like that's when it was, Lee. I hope I'm right. Peter is saying, evening, barman. It was a great weekend, but this week, no whiskey for me. Can't stand the stuff. Can't stand the stuff. Did we overindulge, Frank? Is that what it is, or are you just taking a wee healthy break? Alan McLaughlin is saying, evening, all on Aqvavitae. I was gutted to miss this weekend. Alan, you'll be back soon. You'll be back strong, fit and healthy, and we'll be welcoming you open arms once more. It was nice to meet. I sat for a wee while. There was literally a table of 4 and an empty seat where you should have been, but I was able to welcome all the co-travellers, and it was nice to shake Tommy's hand again. Whisky and Wine Trails is saying, great times. The new venues were smashing. Tomo, I mean, just amazing. He's come over from Arizona. We had Rick Johnson from San Francisco. We had Aaron from San Francisco. We had Amy over from Singapore, Hong Kong. People traveling from all over. It was brilliant. Peter Lee is saying, thank you for hosting such a great event along with Glasgow Whisky Festival for all the visiting barflies. Denise, Amy and I had the best of times. Great I got to give you a helping hand setting up. We all live a fuller life. Peter, thank you very much for the donation, buddy. I hope you're back to a regular routine and looking forward to the next event. 2 more comments before we go on with things. Donald Stewart is saying, evening all. Aqvavitae had a blast at Hampden. Great to be with the Whisky community and sample some great drams. Nice to have you in, Donald. Don't know if we managed to say hello or shake hands. It would be a shame if we didn't. And Ben Whisky with Molly saying, I made it home, only slightly late. Good to have you home, buddy. That's you. You were at an event tonight, I think. And Daniel Key is saying, but Amy's from Paisley. There's a lot of truth in that. There is a lot of truth in that. All right. The first thing I want to talk about is how the Under the Table event on the Friday gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling about whiskey's future. So we're not going to finish on future tonight. We're actually going to start on future because when we set up the Under the Table event, let me explain what the Under the Table event is about. when you go to a festival, if you're a bit cheeky, or if you feel like you've got a relationship, or you know the people behind the counter, or you're building a rapport, sometimes you're tempted to ask if they've got any under the table drams or under the table pours. And the reason for that is that they might have something under there that they want to share with their peers, or with their big fans, the people that are really invested in their products and brands. And that might be something special, something experimental, something a wee bit off-piste. Very often it's things that you can't buy. So that tends to be the thing that most of the geeks are really interested in. But it can, for me, and I don't think that the exhibitors have a problem with this, because they're very well versed at telling people when they do and when they don't have anything under the table for them. But for me, it always feels a wee bit awkward. There's an exchange that can happen, and maybe it's just Scottish culture. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it goes further afield, that you don't want to put people in a position where they're forced to say no to you when they don't want to, right? So you just, for me, I always kind of prefer to focus on what they're excited about that's on the top of the table, because that's where all the effort has gone into selecting the casks, to developing the products. Maybe it's a core range, whatever it may be, and they've got all the products there. They're ready. They're well versed in exactly how they're going to share it with you, and you just come straight in and you go for the kill. You just say, what have you got under the table? It smacks it can be a little bit clumsy, and it can be abused at times. Just my personal take on it. I don't want to make anyone feel shame if they ask for under the table pours. But what I did is, in advance of the festival, I decided to set up a tasting where I could invite certain producers along to bring anything that they cared about, anything that they wanted to share, maybe something that they wanted to get some feedback on, experimental, special, playful, different, weird stuff, things that might see the light of day in the future, and things that might never see the light of day. But I could put them in a room full of invested, eager whiskey geeks, and maybe give them an opportunity to get some feedback on something special. And so we did it for the first time last year for 60 people-ish, maybe 70. And then this year we upscaled that, and we had close to 100 people turning up on the day. So we needed a bigger venue, we needed a bigger room, a bigger space, and we managed that. And I think it was a fantastic success. But overall, we had 7 different drams from 7 different brands. And what it made me realize over the course of the 7 whiskies is just how, we know what I'm about to say. This is not going to be a surprise to anyone that tunes in here from one week to the other. We know that we are living in a golden time for whiskey. There are challenges out there for legacy producers, for mass market producers. There are certainly challenges out there for the big brands, for the medium brands, and the small brands. So I have to be careful and be clear that I'm talking about this from the perspective of the enthusiast. We live in a golden time. The choice of whiskey that we have open to us today, the choice of natural whiskies, the choice of really, really well crafted, carefully thought about whiskey has never been as wide and as varied as it is today. Even in the past, when you had this wildly, or let's not say wildly, but slightly more inconsistent nature of whiskey, where you had extreme peaks but often extreme troughs, that's been kind of attenuated a little bit. The quality seems to be much higher, and the effort that's gone into everything that's released is abundantly clear. No one is talking about efficiency, the most efficient, they're not trying to hit 400 litres per tonne of barley. They're not trying to, no, everything, all the discussion, all the language is about flavour. To a single individual that stood up on that Friday's tasting, that's how they led. This was exciting things. This was something that they genuinely wanted to share, because they thought it was special, because it was exciting for them to talk about. But what I heard from every single presentation is, this is available now, and very, very recently it was not available. And it's going to be interesting to see how this is a precursor to what might be available in the future. Let me give you some examples. I have some of the bottles here, but I don't have them all. I don't have the one that we opened with, which was a wonderfully well-crafted mix of Ardnamurchan and Chichibu. And it was Adelphi. Conal Mackenzie from Adelphi came along, and he stood up and presented and shared. It takes a significant amount of whiskey to donate to this tasting, by the way, because you're catering for up to 100 people. The Glover, the brand new Adelphi release of the Glover 2025. And it was the perfect opener. So Conal was able to talk about the reason behind the Glover, why the Glover exists, that relationship between Scotland and Japan specifically, and how that's such a close bond when it comes to not just whiskey, but infrastructure and ideals. There was none of it left, and if there was any of it left, somebody managed to squirrel it away because I didn't manage to retrieve any bottles of the Glover. But immediately it kind of set the tone. This was a passionate thing. And again, this is something that couldn't have existed very, very recently, because Ardnamurchan is obviously a very recent thing. And there's not been a lot of Chichibu out there to do these projects with, whereas now there's relationships building in whiskey where producers such as Chichibu are happy to work with a Scottish producer to come up with great concepts such as that. Fantastic. Then we immediately moved into something, and you're going to hear me mention this term 3 times, just talking about the single tasting. 7 years old. There were 3 7-year-old whiskies in this flight. And you might think, well, that's a bit young, isn't it? Not at all. There were ridiculously compelling whiskies, every single one of them. But the first 7-year-old is in the glass right now. All the ones that was shared around on Friday, they were full of barrel char, and I'll show you why. This was something brought along by Michael Henry from Loch Lomond Group, but it's not Loch Lomond. This is Glen Scotia. It's Glen Scotia. It's 7 years old from first fill bourbon, and this is fresh cask samples. Can anyone see all that barrel char in there? Look at it. So you can imagine if you tip this upside down and connect it to a speed pourer like what we were doing in order to pour 90 odd drams, you're getting all that barrel char straight into the glass. Most people accepted that as being a very, very kind of natural thing, and a measure of kind of, this is duty paid samples straight from the cask in order to share. I'm going to tell the story of the Dramface team visiting in Glen Scotia in 2022 to celebrate the launch of Dramface. We did a little tour of Campbelltown and Islay. And as we were leaving Glen Scotia after a tour by Ian McAllister, he offered us a dram, one for the road. Anything that you would like, he'd said. And, you know, being polite, we just said, no, Ian, you give us what you would like. What would be dealer's choice kind of thing. And he went to a 6-year-old from First Fill Bourbon, and we all kind of looked at each other and thought, a 6-year-old? That's a bit. It was so good, so good, that to a man, I think if we were able to buy that, if we were able to go to the Glen Scotia shop to pick that single cask up and take it home, that would have been the bottle that we'd have purchased. Obviously, it wasn't something that was available. It was the epitome of an under-the-table thing. It was a glimpse of the future. Now, that's, interestingly, what Michael Henry chose to do when he brought along his pick for the under-table tasting for everyone, was a 7-year-old, pure, ex-bourbon Glen Scotia. This is a marker of the quality of the spirit after only 7 years at Glen Scotia. What's interesting to me is that it's going toe-to-toe with any of the new exciting new wave distilleries that's out there. In so many ways, Glen Scotia is a renaissance story. So they are competing with these new wave distilleries, and they're doing it in the right way. Gradually, year by year, month by month, we're hearing more and more stories coming from Glen Scotia, how they're changing their focus to be much, much closer to the true conditions and demands of malt whiskey. Natural presentation, not adding anything that doesn't need to be added, such as colour, and not taking anything out that shouldn't be taken out, such as those delicious flavour compounds, fatty acids, long chain esters. I forget the things that chill filtration strip out of whiskey. And we can taste it. We can taste the consistency that comes with that renaissance. And we can chase the... I would love to be able to tell you what I knows in this. And I am able to nose things in this tonight, but they're very broad brush things. This is quite creamy to me. It's quite citrusy. It's a little bit salty. And it's difficult to get much more than that just because of the conditions in my head right now. But this, on the palate, it's full and it's bright and it's sit up and pay attention. It was a cracker to share. Then things got crazy. Per Caldenbay's in, talking about 7-year-old whiskies. I do spot one brilliant such aged whiskey on your top shelf. Here. I have to say, Per, it's wonderful to have you in here. You would be shocked how much smogan there was being passed around Glasgow at the weekend. Smogan peated, and also, I know it's probably at the hands of James McGoran, but the amount of bottles of Ashkine that was getting handed around. In fact, I think I have one here. And I know that this was being handed around by James McGoran, but this particular bottle was donated and being shared by Stefan Novak. And it went down very, very, very well. However, I was very, very careful to make sure I managed to pick up the dregs of that bottle before it got rinsed. I hope no one in Stefan doesn't mind me being a wee bit selfish. Pedro is saying whiskey doesn't need decades and decades to be ready when it's thoughtfully made. I think we're learning this in very, very practical, first-hand ways right now, Pedro. You're absolutely spot on. After years of us being under the impression that whiskey needed some time, it's needed some maturity to reach its peak, we're starting to work out, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens with these really well-made whiskies as they become more and more mature. I think we're going to end up in a situation where we might actually see a lot of dematuration, where these whiskies are potentially taken out of first fill bourbon, first fill sherry, and put into quieter refill casks and things like that in the future. It's going to be interesting to see. Drew from Arizona is saying that Loch Lomond under the table sample just glows. The Glen Scotia one, yeah. Martin Jones is saying, I think the new Glen Scotia 12 is delicious and very reasonably priced. Martin, you're spot on. They've read the room on that one. I keep saying it. £45, fully natural, 12-year-old Glen Scotia, 46% ABV. It's just brilliant. It's just a brilliant recipe. Good to hear. There is no way to stop the really good drops of whiskey from getting into and around Glasgow. No way to stop it. We actively encourage it, Per. It's nice to have you hanging out with us tonight. Again, I'm also saying Dave Barnes, Arnie, Simon Thompson, Highland Hamish, and Michael Henry were all happy worth recipients of Smogan Ashkine this time around. That's a lot of sharing you did there, James. Well done to you, fella. It will need to work on a way for us all to be able to get our hands on Smogan in the UK, and we don't have to rely on the Mule Network and the Barflies to distribute it, right? There are ways to do these things, surely. Then, after our 7-year-olds Glen Scotia, Cadenhead stepped up and they got crazy. Cadenhead's brought a 25-year-old last year to the Under the Table tasting, and we didn't think that they were going to out-age that this time around. But another measure of what's suddenly become available to us, now you won't be able to read that. This is a Highland single malt. 40-year-old from 1985 at 45% ABV. Now, they couldn't say that this is one of these undisclosed malts that we're seeing everywhere. We don't care if it's undisclosed, because we don't need to rely on the branding. We understand that this is from a fairly large, very, very popular, well-known distillery, very close to the town of Tain in the Northern Highlands. And this was dram number 3. And Grant McPherson stood up and shared a 40-year-old malt with us. Stunning privilege, stunning support, stunning treat, and a stunning measure of trust and gratitude towards the community that they know make up their livelihood. A wonderful gesture from Cadenheads, it really, really was. And a beauty of a dram as well. Maybe that's what I should have had in the glass there. Where did we go after that, after Cadenheads? I don't want to miss anything out. Another bottle that I didn't manage to get home any dregs from was Simon Thompson from Thompson Brothers. And at this point, I want to talk about, this wasn't a panel of hosts that were standing up in front of a room one after the other, like kind of pop-ups, whack-a-mole type things, and given a delivery to a room. They were sitting around the room amongst everyone else. And they were positioned, the only consideration that was there was for them to be facing the room wherever they stood up from. They were able to deliver and speak to the room of over 90 barflies, whiskey enthusiasts, whiskey botherers, whatever you want to call them. So Simon stood up and shared a 27-year-old Glengarry. The only thing that was a mystery about that Glengarry is that it was from sherry, but we didn't know what kind of sherry. To me, it was very nutty. I was in the camp where I was kind of going in the direction of Amontillado or something, but the general consensus around the room ended up being Fino. And I think that was what Simon's suggestion was, that it felt closest to him that it's going to be a Fino cask. So we had this wonderful old 1990s, I think it was a 1998 vintage Glengarry. From the Thompson Brothers. Again, 3 bottles of that to go around the room. Wonderful support, wonderful gesture, and gorgeous liquid too. Cracking. How does it get better? How does it get better? Well, we fall at that point back on to this 7-year-old theme. And we go back down to the Kintyre Peninsula, and we had Kilkerran. We had Glengyle Distillery involved in the Undertable tasting this year, and they brought along a 7-year-old. What was incredible about this, and I think the first time I've tried such a thing, and I'm going to pour a wee drop of this just now because this really surprised me. And it's not just surprised me because, like the Scotia, it's a 7-year-old. It's surprising me because it's just gorgeous whiskey. But this is heavily peated Kilkerran. I'm only going to pour a tiny amount. This is heavily peated Kilkerran. It's triple distilled. This is triple distilled. You expect it to be light, a bit more ethereal, maybe a bit less body, and none of those things were true. So it's just surprise after surprise after surprise. Let's see if I can nose anything on this. Well, despite my head cold and peat blindness, you won't be surprised that there's a lovely kind of soft smoke to this. I'm not going to try and give you too many taste notes tonight. It's almost pointless, but I can smell delightful things, and I can definitely smell that I've got my nose in a glass of whiskey, which is enough for me when I'm feeling like this. Cheers, everyone. Can taste aniseed, a lot of licorice there, lots of citrus, orange rind, lemon rind. Like I say, let's not dwell on the taste notes tonight because they could be all over the place, just based on my head cold and the condition that I'm in. But I didn't have a head cold on Friday. I didn't have a head cold on Sunday. When I tasted this, I was shocked. It had nothing. Everything I expected to be in this glass was here, but had so much more as well. And it was 7 years old. 7 years old. Whiskey Novice Jim is celebrating being a member of Barflies for 6 to 8 months. You superstar. You were a superstar on the weekend as well, Jim. I loved seeing you there. Cheers, Roy. Cheers, Barfly. Great to see you all. Ginger Genius John. Ever so briefly, I caught you, John. It was nice to have you, saying the 27-year-old was my least favourite of the day. Banana skin. Oh, my goodness. I like that you're using my least favourite as a language, as opposed to I didn't like. And that's kind of a theme that lasts the whole weekend. Whiskey with Molly Benessine at Kilkerran was my dram of the day. We're talking about a 7-year-old triple distilled Kilkerran, right? It's crazy. Gavin Blocker, St. Aqvavitae. It was in the lineup in the Kilkerran tasting I did before coming to Glasgow. Fantastic. So you had some insider details before you even got to Glasgow, Herman. Whiskey and Wine Trails is in my notes. Triple distilled, lemony, underripe pineapple, bright on the nose, sweet but quite peaty. Wow. Terrific that you took notes as well, Tom. Klaus Falsgraf is saying heavily peated but triple distilled. Sounds to me like really soft smoke that constitutes its own taste base, rather than being in front of everything else. And with most peaties, I'm starting to notice a lot of modern peated whiskies are very, very good at getting the peat inside the spirit. It's kind of not. You could sometimes, and I think that's what you're referring to, Class, you sometimes get that separation. You know, the smoke comes first and hard, and it's almost like a blanket of smoke. It's like a different experience. And then you have to taste past the smoke to get into the fruit and the grain and the malt and whatever it may be. So I get what you're saying, but I've noticed, I mean, Ardnahoe, I think, would be a perfect example of that, how we're often not feeling that that's the case. Gary Field, you star Gary, good to have you. And he's saying, loved meeting the wonderful community in Glasgow. We loved welcoming you as well, buddy, and I hope it's not the last time, Gary. Ben Marnick is saying, thank you, Roy, for making last weekend possible. Got to meet two of my whiskey heroes, Simon Thompson and Jim the Whiskey Novice. My friend Flora summed it up, the best whiskey event ever. I have to say that Ben's +1 was Flora. It turned out I spotted her as a ringer as soon as she walked into the room. She was put in the group, the team that she was tasting in. And no spoilers, I won't say what team won right now, but she was put with the Novaks, Stefan Novak's team. And let's just say that Flora probably found it quite easy to score 10 out of 10 on the blind challenge. Ben, you and Flora will be welcome back every time. Christoph is saying, Aqvavitae, I hope you feel better soon. Till the replay, looking forward to it. Christoph, thank you for joining us. Rest easy, my friend. And now that you're here on the replay, welcome back, Christoph. I hope you're doing well. So then we move on from one 7-year-old to another 7-year-old. It's at this point you're thinking, this is very, very cool, because these producers, they can bring anything that they want. And they are so confident at bringing along 7-year-old product. But when we get to the next whiskey, they're coming along and they're bringing a 7-year-old product because that's probably the best that they have. It's the oldest whiskey that they have, but they're still going to try and do the best that they can. So Ardnahoe was invited along in 2025. Of course they were. The Isla distillery that's on everyone's lips at the moment, right? Making remarkably high quality whiskey. Everything seems to be going right for them right now, and they're playing fair. Their cask strength has just come out, 65 to 70 pounds. They've got a core range in the mid-50s, 60 pounds for the Bolsa Sherry cask version. Society releases, Fischio releases, all coming out at reasonable price points. For the under the table, the tasting, Paul Main stood up and shared this with us. Now, there's still enough liquid in this bottle for you to just get your head around what we have here. So it's going to be no surprise to you all. There's no stats on this label apart from the distillation date and the ABV of 60.7% ABV. That isn't even distillation date, actually. But this is an Ardnahoe from Oloroso. Great. But it's also heavily peated Ardnahoe. Now, and I know that you're already thinking that Ardnahoe is very heavily peated, and you would be right. I'm on record as saying it's more reminiscent to me of the Southern Isla distilleries than anything else. But for me, this was like a complete palate reset. It was just bang. This is 100 ppm malt to make up this batch. I don't know if there's any plans for this to be used, if this is going to be a release in the future, but if this was to be a future release, I would be first in line to make sure I was getting a bottle, regardless of how or where it came out. It was a belter, and I think even with my head cold, even with me being blocked up right now, I think that might be the one that I close out tonight, if I remember with. It was a belter. Whisky and Wine Trails Thomas in Arnaho 7. Sherry, 100 ppm from crisp. Quite sweet, rich, maple bacon, also peaty, dry finish. Very good Aqvavitae. Tom sharing his notes with us. Tom, it was just fantastic. It was difficult. I had to pinch myself that you were there. Just seeing out, just casually, just sitting in a group of other barflies. There's Tom O from Arizona. There's Whisky and Wine Trails. Tom just sitting, getting along with it. It's just fantastic. It was just so cool. Dave Shaw celebrating being a barfly for 18 months. 18 months well spent with an amazing community. Cheers. Dave, I don't know if we've met before, buddy, but it would be great to welcome you in Glasgow at some time in the future. And Ben, Whisky with Molly, saying, I spoke to Paul on Saturday, and he is now under a lot of pressure from a lot of people to get that Arnaho released. Tom Frary saying that Arnaho. Yeah, it was just, it's nice to sit back when someone else is hosting. It really is. And you have the ability to kind of almost read the room a little bit. And because you're hosting, I think, certainly I'm just speaking about myself maybe, it's difficult to go quiet and just kind of feel the vibes of the room. You always kind of, I suppose you want to keep no dead air. You want to keep talking if you've got anything to share. But for me, it was interesting to see the room going silent at some drams and people just kind of looking at each other and the faces lighting up, the heads lifting, you know, as the reactions to all the glasses. It's fantastic to see. For those of you keeping count, that's me gone through the 6 whiskies that last year we did a welcome dram and 6 whiskies. This year we did 6 whiskies and a surprise dram, a departure dram. So we've had Adelphi's Glover, we've had Glen Scotia's ex-bourbon, we've had Cadden Head's Highland Malt 40-year-old, we've had Thompson Brothers 27-year-old Geary, we've had Kilkerran's Peated Triple Distilled, and we've had Arnaho's Oloroso 100 ppm. Then Julie stood up. Julie's in charge of, well, she's not in charge of, she's chair of the Glasgow Whisky Club, but you know her as being one of the front of house people for Decadent Drinks. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous person. Love her, love her, love her. She's also behind the Glasgow Whisky Festival along with Mark and Thomas. The reason that it happens every year has got so much to do with all the energies of those 3 people. They're the fulcrums, they're the people that it all revolves around. And for me specifically, she's my contact point to enable so many things for all of the barflies that come along with me. She stood up to talk about a project from Decadent Drinks and then immediately just cut our intro short and handed over to me. I've been teasing this for a wee while now, and I think I want to share it with you tonight. It's no longer a secret. It's out there on social media and things like that. People are sharing it, and it's a real product now. In fact, yeah, I have a bottle of it here, and I'll be able to share it with everyone. I went in to pick up the dregs of this, and not only were there no dregs left in any of the bottles, there were no bottles left. So this is so precious that people were nicking, people were stealing the empty bottles too, which is fantastic. So, but Royal Mile Whiskies and Decadent Drinks worked together in order to get a free bottle from the warehouse and get it down to me so that I could take photos of this and so that I could start to share it with the community. And I can't think of a better spot to share it than tonight. Obviously, with all of my bottles, I have to caveat it with it's always going to go through Patreon first. It's the way that every release that I've ever released has been released, and I don't see that changing in the future. I find it very, very hard to find ways to pay back patrons who support me at patreon.com, who make this everything exist. They couldn't. I have dignity in calling this my living now. And it's because of those people on Patreon. So I'm always going to look after those people first. I hope that makes perfect sense. Anyway, I've been working with brands. Started off with Loch Lomond and then Ardnamurchan and Daftmill and Ardnaho and recently Glasgow. And what I've been doing and working with these people is trying to get close to their spirit, close to their, and I hesitate to use the words distillery character because You know, people can make whiskey any way they want to make it, but as close to what they recognise as their spirit as possible. So Loch Lomond was always ex-bourbon and refill as well. Daphne was absolutely ex-bourbon. Of course, it was going to be that. Ardnamurchan, both different takes on refill, right? Unpeated Ardnamurchan. Glasgow, the first ever first fill bourbon released from Glasgow, 8 years old. More on that to follow. I want to work with the brand, and I want to honour their brand. I want everything to be in their livery, and just a barfly on the bottle is enough for me. That's the collaboration there. A mutually positive, beneficial product selection, product development thing. However, it does mean that I've kind of got myself in a bit of a furrow, because it means that I'm always going to have to follow the brand, which is fine with me. And I'm also going to be continuing that theme of trying to get quite close to the spirit of whatever distillery I'm working with. Now let's flip that. Let's talk about how I could collaborate with an independent bottler. Suddenly the creativity floodgates are just open. You can do anything. And I had this idea in my head, and it just so happened that the timing worked out perfectly. A chance discussion with Angus McRailed, and a sample that was available at that moment that we could make the most of. So we started to work together. As we worked together, he pitched an idea, and I went, fantastic, I like it. Can I pitch this idea? And we just kind of gradually built forward to realize a product that we could release in this spirit I'm about to share with you now. But it needed a partner on board that I've never had to rely on before, and that was a creative hand. It needed someone that could take my idea and render it real. And that ended up being the superstar that is Arnie Doodle the Dram. Our pal Arnie, you might recognise him from bringing the new Midgie to life at Ardnamurchan. There's artwork on another bottle from Arnie that'll appear in a little bit later. He's just a really, really lovely guy. He's one of the funnest barflies you'll hang out with. He's one of us, and he's super, super talented. And Arnie was really excited to work with me on this concept. So I wanted to figure out a product that I could release with different independent bottlers, different malt, different whiskies, just change and be different every time. That we could be completely free, but have one consistent thing to celebrate the community, to celebrate us, and to celebrate everything that we enjoy about it. And this bottle, I can't believe it's real. This is the first bottle I'm going to share with you. I'm going to give it a polish. This is the Virtual Malt. Now, don't get too distracted by the artwork here. I'm going to show you this artwork in a second. This is the Virtual Malt. There's a passage on the back that talks about what the Virtual Malt is and what it means as a concept. But obviously the vPub, the V, and it's a small V because it's virtual, it's the virtual pub, but there's nothing virtual about it. Really, the only thing that is virtual is the space, the concept of a pub. There isn't a pub. I'm sitting here, I'm on my own. You're tuning in, and wherever you're sitting on, whether it's your sofa, you're sitting in your kitchen, you're sitting in front of TV, wherever you are, there's nothing virtual about you, the whiskey that you're drinking, the space that you're sitting in. There's nothing virtual about where you are on the planet, whether you're in Americas, Asia, south of the equator, anywhere in Europe, or much closer to home in the UK. You're very real. We are all real. So this kind of virtual malt concept is very tongue-in-cheek. And the way that I can show you that that's the case is through artwork. Let me share this with you here now. This is the label, and I've made prints of these, and I hope that there are enough prints for one to go out with every bottle that's shipped. Speyside single malt Scotch whisky, the Virtual Malt. And as we scroll down here, you're going to see a host of characters. And these characters are much like the malt that's inside the bottle. These are undisclosed characters. These are typical characters that you might see in any pub scene in the vPub. You might see a barman who looks a little bit familiar. You might see other barmen who look a little bit familiar, pouring to familiar patrons with familiar pets. The scene is littered with Easter eggs. I don't need to go through them here and now. These will tumble out over time. But there's nods to the whiskey, there's nods to the community, there's nods to everything in here. This is a 17-year-old Speyside single malt whiskey. And because this is an edition of Decadent Drinks, the marketing malt, you'll know right away what whiskey we're talking about. And you can see from various cues and clues and Easter eggs and things in the label that might lead you towards exactly what kind of whiskey this is. 17 years old, 55% ABV, which has become obviously my preferred ABV. A bit of a wee kind of soft trademark now, a bit of a vanity thing, but it works perfectly at that ABV. Here's the back label here. And the back label's got a passage on it that talks about the virtual pub, virtual spaces, undisclosed faces. I'll let you read that at your leisure. There's a disclaimer here. This is a virtual product. Any resemblance to products or persons in the physical realm, past or present, is purely coincidental. This is part of a printed sheet. The original sketch is in the background. You can see Arnie's original sketch. And this A4 sheet will go out wrapped around every bottle. This is the original label artwork that's been used on the sheet. Printed at high res on a nice thick stock. It's got a silk matte finish, a nice robust piece of paper that hopefully should last the shipping okay, but it's just a wee bonus. I'm going to give you some close-ups here so that you can see some characters up close. I know people in the community that look a lot like this here. Yeah, certainly recognize people who look like that. This will maybe help you see it a wee bit better. I can maybe zoom in on this a bit here. We've been very careful about colour palette and things like that too, to give us a nice 1920s theme and feel to everything. I can stare at this all day long. I absolutely love the care that's gone into this. Here we have an Austrian themed gilly at the end of the bar, looking very rosy cheeked and happy. It's wonderful to see him. Here we have somebody bringing a little bit of mischief and trouble from outside of the room. Not fully inside the room yet. Here we have somebody deciding to leave the room. And we have, of course, somebody recharging and somebody carefully doing what barflies do and looking out for them while they recharge. Absolutely love it. Here we've got a wider aspect to the scene where we've got people just hanging around and enjoying drams together. Absolutely adore it. Here we've got something of a peanut gallery going on here. Oops, let's bring that back again. This is just joyous to me. And this is one of my favourite pictures here. One of my favourite scenes is just this kind of, there's just so much going on. So much going on. Now, while I've been sharing that with you, I've not been able to look at the chat. So I'm hoping that that's gone down quite well. I need to tell you more on the details. Ben is saying, I nearly fell off my chair when I realised what was on this label, Aqvavitae. Lots of love getting thrown around. Falscraft is saying, I've seen it, Aqvavitae, but I wasn't aware it was going to be on a bottle. Doodle the Dram, that is fantastic. Yeah, please give Arnie your love for the amount of effort that he put into all of this. Hellswood is saying there were a few tears when this was shared. Amazing. More than a few tears. Tears from more than just you, Helen. Don't worry about it. It was wonderful. Whiskey with Molly saying, I'm now introduced to my people. Hi, I'm Ben. You may recognise me from the label on a bottle of Macallan. See, we're getting a wee bit carried away with ourselves. It might be Macallan. It might be somebody that looks a wee bit like you, Ben. Kyle Taylor is saying, love this. Andrew Pears is saying, Wook on the newspaper. That's someone that may hate grapes. It says drinks whiskey. Exactly. They're not into their sherry, David. Ian Williamson is saying, brilliant label. Kicking myself. I turned down an empty bottle from Aqvavitae, but I'm hoping to get a full bottle. Danny Hevington is saying, oops. It jumped there, Danny. I'm so sorry. Danny Hevington is saying Aqvavitae, Wook on the newspaper. Nice detail. Yeah, that's right. It's we've got a detective scene there, and he's looking at reading the newspaper, and everyone's asking, "Where's Wook?" Right? Wook is still here. He's very much still here. Wook is still very much a patron, and it's brilliant to have him. Chris Pollack is saying, "Doodle Dram." It's on its own just a great piece of art. It really is, Chris. It really is. Gavs Rams is saying that would make a great picture to hang on the wall. That's why each of these prints are going out with every copy. John Coogan is saying, Aqvavitae, you need to get that blown up and framed. It's amazing. Dude, all the drama is spreading the love everywhere. You should be receiving it, buddy. Danny Hempton is saying it's absolutely brilliant. It really, really is. It really is, Barry. Hey, Danny, sorry. So you want to know when it's coming out? Well, I'm not going to open this with you tonight because I need this bottle for product pictures and things like that. And I need to start promoting this. This has been released. This is our Christmas release. This is the thing that I've been, all the guesses that were out there from everyone, people thinking it was going to be a Delphi, Watt whiskey, the amount of different guesses of who it was going to be. I don't think anyone guessed that I can remember that it was going to be a Decadent Drinks collaboration this time around. But I'm really, really chuffed with it, really proud of it. We shared this as the last dram of the day that shows my confidence in it, that it went out after such spectacular whiskies, and it went down very, very well. This will cost £155. This is 17-year-old, 55% ABV, highly sought after Speyside malt whiskey, and it comes out on the 1st of December. The bad news is there are only 341 bottles. Why? Because there was 344 and we broke 3 at the tasting on Friday. Now that I've got this, there's only 340 remaining. Sometimes that's going to happen. Let me tell you that that's roughly what the number of Glasgow bottles were when they were sold to patrons. So I feel fairly confident that we're going to be able to sate the demand within Patreon with this release of 340, and maybe, fingers crossed, we might see a few making it out to public sale, but it's just the nature of it. There's nothing I can promise. A hogshead only yields this amount of bottles, so we take it. It's a fantastic opportunity for me to try a brand new concept with you all, and it comes out on the 1st of December. I can tell by the reaction that you guys are excited about it too. It's just so much fun way of recognizing everything that we achieve together. It will be my birthday bottle for next year, says Herban. Pedro is saying, have to leave now, Barflies and Aqvavitae. I'll catch up later and I'll see you next week. Pedro, thanks very much for hanging out with us, my friend. I got the pint signed by Aqvavitae and Doodle the Dram, who also drew his signature midgie on it. Andy Hills is saying, evening, Roy. Thanks for a fab weekend. Back home for work and opening a Springbank 5-year-old to sip and catch up on the chat. That image is marvellous. Bravo, Arnie and Doodle the Dram. Andy, congratulations, buddy, on your success on Sunday as well. Everyone, please note that every little detail in this, as well as every original sketch underneath, all this is directed by Aqvavitae himself, every single detail. Okay. One day, people will see my original sketch, Arnie, and then they'll see compare it to your finished artwork, and they'll be able to understand that you're being very, very modest. Have to leave. Sorry, I picked up that from Pedro. It's really fun, Arnie. It's really fun that you would say that. Danny is saying, I'm going to have to get a minute a minute Aqvavitae sign to hang above my Aqvavitae shelf. Great fun. Fantastic. More to follow through Patreon. You guys will know about it first. Just the way you know the drill by now. You just look out for the announcements on Patreon, and I can't wait to share it with you. It's going to be an absolute cracker. Thank you. Cheers, everyone. Thank you to the superstar Arnie as well. And also thank you to the trust of the team at Decadent Drinks for their support with the artwork, with the concept, with the openness, the trust, the willingness to work together, and me to take something that they already had quite well established and kind of crowbar it into something for my own community. It's just another measure of the fantastically collaborative and open-minded thing that we have going in whiskey generally. I did not recognise every likeness, but those I did are great, says Klaus. Anthony Lambert is saying, I now have to work out a way of getting a bottle from the UK to Germany, flying back to Wales from Christmas, so there could be possibilities. There's always possibilities, Anthony. We're hopefully not going to let things like that get in the way of it. Me gloat never, lol, says Andy Hills, who I don't doubt for a second has been gloating at every possible opportunity, especially to his wife. Poor Helen. Poor Helen. But well done, Andy. We can't take anything away from you. So that's the future of whiskey. I think it's amazing. The confidence for producers to bring along 7-year-olds alongside really kind of mature things. And for us to look at those mature things and say, wait a minute, whiskey's coming back to us. These are suddenly very, very mature, well-aged whiskies that are within reach again. Let me move forward now from the Friday to the Glasgow Whisky Festival on the Saturday and give you another measure of whiskies present based on the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. I've been going to Glasgow Whisky Festival for a number of years now. I don't think I've missed one since 2016, I guess. I've seen it be remarkably consistent in its flow and in its structure and how it plays out, with very little changes over the years. But behind the scenes, when you look a little bit deeper, when you take a step back to look at things from a broader perspective, the changes that it maps year on year on year in whiskey is quite remarkable. When I was first going to Glasgow Whisky Festival, my feeling and my memory is that there were so many more brands, so much more in the way of official bottlings from legacy producers. And if you go back to 2016, that makes sense. Ardnamurchan didn't even have any spirit out there as an example. Maybe the only producer that was looking to release spirit back then would have been, I suppose, new producers would have been Wolfburn. My goodness, in 2016, Arran was still only 20 years old. We're now sitting here with Arran with a 30-year-old official release, right? Things were very, very different back then. So there were a lot less independent distilling going on. But there was also a lot less independent bottlers. There were independent bottlers there. I always remember them having a presence at the festival. But today, and incrementally, year by year by year, we've seen that, I believe, increase, and that's a positive thing. Here's the big positive, though, that I feel in 2025. Over whiskies, let's say, exacerbated years, let's say pandemic years, peak years, however you want to call it, but it was peak crazy. It was inflated prices. It was premiumization chasing. It was aspirational products and more expensive, and cask, the value of the liquid in the cask going up year after year after year, making it more and more challenging for the independent producers to put out a good value product, and more challenging for the legacy distillers to release their product onto the market when they felt it was a far more lucrative asset than it actually was. So what we started to see was a lot of fairly stable, good quality, dependable whiskies available to enjoy at the festivals, but not much different. It was mostly reliant on kind of the readily available, the core range stuff. And there were special releases. Springbank would turn up with maybe a local barley or something. There were these exciting releases, but there was a real clamour for them. And for me, it was always a little bit off-putting, because while I could get involved in the scrum and the clamour and maybe get my hands on some of that stuff, it's just not my vibe. It's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to take a step back and see what was actually available and enjoyable. What we see last year, and remarkably so this year, is much, much more variety, much more confidence in that variety, and much better pricing, even when the maturity of the whiskey is extremely high. One of the first drams I tried on Saturday was a Cadenhead's 40-year-old North British, 4 decades old, and it was less than £150. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, it's a bottle of grain whiskey. Okay, this was not what I expected from a grain. This was bold and robust and strong and communicative. This wasn't a light little lick of bubble gum and candy floss. This wasn't a sweet little thin thing. This was quite a bold start to my day. And it was a kind of marker of the rest of the day as I went round the tables. There were people pouring, mature teenagers, things in their 20s, things in their 30s, sharing them. Tabletop, not under the table drams. Whiskey is coming back to us. And it's amazing to see how gleefully the producers are sharing it. As they share it with gleeful punters, shocked that they're able to put their hand out their glass and get a free pour of a 30-year-old Glenburgie. I didn't buy this bottle. This has come back with about, I would say there's 25 mils in there, I don't know, a generous dram in the bottom of this. I'm going to pour this tonight. I've had this a couple of times over the weekend. I had it at the festival, poured by Rachel at the festival, Rachel from Fragrant Drops. And I had it on Sunday at the bottle share on Sunday as well. Get him to recognise the artwork there on the front. Quite recognisable, isn't it? The man has not only a talent, but he has a style. That's Arnie. This is a 30-year-old Glenburgie from a refill bourbon barrel. A remarkably robust 49, I think it is, 49.7% ABV after 3 decades in refill wood. Right up my street. I have a fairly sharp recollection of this from the festival. It was a little bit blurry on the Sunday, but I remember this at the festival. And my memory of it was its juiciness, its fruity juiciness. Let's see if I get that tonight through this head cold. There was no tag around this bottle, so I just want to put a massive shout out to whoever brought this along to the bottle share on the Sunday. What a wonderful thing to share with everyone. If you're in here, please claim it. I want to thank you. Cheers, everyone. Affordable. I mean, this isn't cheap whiskey. It's still, I think it's £200, something like that. But just 30-year-old whiskey just 3 years ago was unobtainium, right? And now it's suddenly become maybe a Christmas treat, something like that. Cheers, everyone. That juiciness is there. It's really difficult for me with such a stuffed up head, but there's lots of wood spice there, sandalwood, a little bit of cinnamon in there too, a little touch of ginger, powdered ginger, lots bags of fruit, juicy fruit gum, definitely, sweet fruit, sweet citrus, clementine, syrup, ridiculous finish, despite my condition, my health condition right now. Incredible. Herman Blocker is saying Jimmy Jazz brought it. Whisky with Molly. That was from Jimmy Jazz, superb bottle share. Petehead, the bottle was donated by Jimmy Jazz. And Jimmy Jazz is here saying, that's where my bottle went, Aqvavitae. Save some for Scotty Kilted Moose. I can absolutely hand this wee dribble and the bottle itself over to Scotty. I want to mention those guys as well when we get to talking about the Sunday. Andy Hells is saying, was a belter. Cheers, Jimmy Jazz. Everyone is saying, ahoy, malt makes. Good to see you in, Chris. Good to have you, buddy. Jolly Rover is saying, good night, Whisky folk. We'll see the rest on replay. Roy, thank you for all involved for an amazing weekend. What a community. Kevin, it was brilliant to welcome you there in Glasgow for the first time this weekend. And Darren as well. We managed to welcome Darren. Wish you well, Roy. Off to bed myself. And we'll catch the rest up later. Lots and lots of folk still weary from the weekend. Darren, thank you for joining us. Thank you to Kevin as well. Sleep, rest easy. And Mike from Inverurie Whisky Shop is in saying, you must be feeling better by now. What with that whiskey in me? Whiskey, is there anything it can't do right? I'm actually feeling just a little bit out of it, almost like if, you know, how that when you're all up inside your own head. But I'm okay. Malts of Scotland is saying, that's a good question. He's saying, if you say the future, what do you think about all the new distilleries? Are there too much? You know, it remains to be seen. I think if the legacy distilleries continued to move off, chasing their own aspirational markets and luxury goods and all of these things, and if they had decided to leave the grassroots behind, there was lots of space in the vacuum left for independent distilleries and new distilleries and things to step into and cater for that. But now that market is considerably smaller, less appealing, less lucrative, we could see a shift where the legacy producers suddenly turn and come back into that space, come out with new products and new ranges, adjust their core ranges and things to try and compete for, you know, our budgets, you know, the people who are happy to go out and spend, you know, 30 to 70 pounds and a bottle treats up to maybe occasionally beyond 100 and things like that for really good quality, tasty whiskies. Maybe they're going to want to try and reposition so they can move back into that space. And I think in that scenario, there is an argument that there could be too much. There could be a lot of attrition when that happens. But for me, I kind of want to continue to support the people who supported us, you know, the ones that didn't gouge on prices through when everything went crazy. Might have been hard to get their product, but they weren't tempted to double and triple the prices each time when it came out. Whereas there were some producers out there that did exactly that. I want to support the ones that stayed true to their long-term business plan. And I want to continue to support them, and I want to be part of their growth as they evolve and their whiskey becomes more mature and theoretically, hopefully, fingers crossed, better year after year after year. That's kind of where I want to be. And it doesn't mean I'm going to shut myself off to legacy producers who start to bring out much more, let's say, naturally focused, more integrity-forward, earnest whiskies. I'm not going to just ignore it, but they're going to have to compete for our attention with these newer distilleries who have been establishing themselves quietly while they went off to chase other more lucrative quarries. There will be too much. That's the long and the short of it. Unless whiskey has some kind of renaissance again, where there is space for all of these new brands simply because of their smaller scale. You imagine a Glenlivet, a Glenmorangie, a Macallan, a Glenfiddich. You know, these distilleries we're talking about 10, 12, 15, 21 million litres per annum. Whereas you look at even a fairly large-scale new distillery such as Ardnamurchan, rarely have they managed to hit their output figure of, you know, 400,000 litres, less than even half of 1 million litres per annum. And then there's just swathes and swathes of much, much, much smaller distilleries, even much smaller than that again. So the scale that they're able to put out there means that it's he's kind of in a different space, a different realm altogether. But the truth is that a retail space doesn't measure it like that. A retail space needs the width of a bottle each time. And I think it's going to be difficult with the sheer amount of brands that are out there. That's down to people like us. It's down to people like us help people that's coming into whiskey navigate that space. It's on our shoulders to say, these whiskies are good and worth your while. This one is a little bit more expensive for these reasons. This one is very good value. This is a perfect whiskey for you to cut your teeth on. It's down to us to kind of help take away the intimidation factor with people coming in and just getting a plethora of just so many whiskey brands. But listen, there are products in the world, such as wine is a perfect example, that seems to get along just fine with limitless amounts of labels. And because of the small scale of these producers, they're able to survive. And it could be the same in whiskey. I had no idea the dress code for Aqvavitae events was vintage. It's only vintage when it's on theme for that particular bottling, right, Mike? Good to see you. And Brian Sutherland is saying Aqvavitae, a fun challenge for us little guys. No doubt. And while there aren't any releases of 8 Door Spirit yet, Ryan, we're very, very eager to see what's happening, of course. You've been bringing out your own product, the Seven Sun series, things like that. So you already know what it's like to play as a small scale producer. The future's going to be interesting. Stevie O has been super generous and bought 20 Aqvavitae gift memberships. That's 20 random people in the community are going to get a Barfly membership, keeping everything ad-free on the vPub, which is really important to me. But the big deal is that you mean that I never need to go to Google for ad revenue share, of course, but you also get access to channel-themed emoji, little loyalty badges and things like that to colour up the chat, the comments. It'd be nice to have you participating and playing along. And also Scotland says, but you have to see the world market. Most countries have their own whiskey distilleries. Best one for me outside of Scotland is Westphalian in Germany, a German spirit with a touch of Scotland. There's quite a lot of producers out there right across the globe that produce an homage to Scotland, Scottish whiskey. Again, the scale of these things are tiny, absolutely tiny compared to all the big whiskey brands that we've been dealing with over the years. So it remains to be seen if the appetite is out there in the whiskey drinking communities across the world, the whiskey drinking population. Are they going to just continue to go with the brands that they know? Or is there an appetite out there for them to migrate to things with a bit more integrity, flavour, depth, body, all of these things? It remains to be seen. I know what I am up for supporting. Grain and Malt is saying, cracked the first bottle of the loot from the trip. Ardnamurchan Heritage Barley in the glass. Beast of a dram. Good for you, James. Back enjoying it on a Thursday night in class is saying the YouTube members are also the ones who can get what's left of your bottlings after the patrons are satisfied. Klaus, thank you for pointing that out. You're very, very spot on. Many thanks. Great view, says Malts of Scotland. It's nice to have you here. I suspect you may be in Germany. Terrific stuff. Okay, so we move on to the last day and my takeaways from the last day. And of course, the last day is really kind of like I joke tongue-in-cheek that it's the main event and things like that and stuff. And of course, no, the catalyst, the big event is the festival itself. That's the draw for everyone. That's why everyone's traveling to Glasgow. But for our community, for me, put my selfish hat on and just talk about us. The vPub, Aqvavitae, maybe Dramface and other things too, sure. But everything that overlaps with, the Venn diagram that overlaps with all my peer creators out there, David Drinks Whiskey, Jim Whiskey Novice, Gav's Drams, more and more and more. We're talking about us. And that's the focus of Sunday. So gamify the blind challenge, set everybody in a room, have a really humble, earnest go at blind challenging ourselves, blind challenging the whiskey first, and then ourselves, gamifying it, and then having a lovely community bottle share afterwards. I'm going to share with you the results on somebody joked that this, I usually have a screen, like a big screen and I can hook up a computer and do a wee presentation to do all of this. But in the new venue, which was much better, despite what I'm just about to say, much more space, much more room to move and stretch our legs and things. But we didn't have the screen, so we made do with, somebody joked that it was a Springbank computer, and I think that's perfect. And these are the 15 teams that we had on that day, and these are how they ranked each of the bottles. Each bottle corresponds to a colour, and I'm going to share with you what those bottles are just now. But I've been missing things going all in the chat here. Gary Field is saying, love meeting the wonderful community in Glasgow. I think I mentioned you. Anthony Lambert is saying, members celebrating being a member for 27 months. He's saying, no Glasgow Whisky Festival for me. Hope to see you all at Limburg in 2026. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that, Anthony. 18 months well spent with an amazing community. Cheers, says Dave Shaw. I think I picked up these. And Donald Stewart has just joined the Aqvavitae Barflies. Thank you for your support, Donald. Thank you for stepping forward. Graham Young is celebrating being a member for 45 months. Those bottles shared around like they were sublime. Absolutely, Graham. And David Hong, as always, has bought me a wee dram. David in the States. No comment or anything like that, but David, always wonderful to have you in, and your generosity too. Cheers to you. Lolander is saying, won't you have to find a new Indian restaurant to go to after the festival now that the Bonaccord is moving? Not really. There might be some changes for next year. But even if we, the walk from the Bonaccord to the city centre is 10 minutes. We really don't know what the shape of next year is going to look like. So we'll just wait and see. Things like the restaurants and things can be relatively short notice. The events things is things that need to be locked down a wee bit earlier. Excuse me, I'm going to just hit the mute so I can have a... That's what I call my burp button when I hit that wee button. Just mute myself out. Apologies, too much information. Jerry Miller is saying, I thought the Haberdashery was a great place. We all did. We loved being there. We thought it was fantastic, Jerry. And Hellswood is saying, will they let us back next year? Yes, we have confirmation and we have first dibs on the same date for next year. Glasgow Whisky Festival is the 7th of November for 2026, which would mean us at the Haberdashery would be the 8th. Doodle Dram is saying, one of the biggest laughs on Saturday was experiencing Gav's Drams and the Whisky Friends party at the Bon. If they teamed up for a YouTube channel, Ofcom would be very busy. What a laugh. And Rob Smith is saying, we need a burp button emoji. A burp button emoji, yeah. You just don't want to be burping in people's ears. And when you're talking a lot, right? Talking a lot and sipping whiskey, you can get a wee bit of wind. Graham Brown is celebrating being a member. Graham, so good to have you, buddy. So good to see you there at the weekend. Brilliant weekend and lovely to see everyone at Glasgow Whisky Festival. It was good to have you, big guy. Okay, so here's the whiskies that I shared at the blind challenge. Let's just share with you what they are first, and you can judge me on my curation of the whiskies. The perfect set of blind whiskies should do a few things. They should be different enough to be able to work in a blind flight. There should be separation and definition between them, but there should be a potential of a little bit of overlap. They should also not be extremely different on ABV either. If you're pouring a 43%er alongside a 60%er, it doesn't matter about the nose and the palate and the color and all of these things. People are just going to put it to their lips and know immediately the difference between the two. So there are things that you have to do to make sure that it's not a stupid thing, that there is genuinely a challenge in it. But you don't want to be, it's far too easy to be really obtuse and difficult and make it nearly impossible. You need to make people feel like they can taste, they can taste the differences. With that in mind, here's what I settled on for 2025. We had a vPub staple. This has become a staple. This is a sealed bottle, but it's the last bottle I have. I've been picking this up over the months and storing them away for the blind challenge. And we rinsed 3 bottles of this for the blind challenge on Sunday. This is the John Walker and Sons. This is basically Johnny Walker's celebratory edition. So the branding here, John Walker and Sons, the white label, Everything about it was a hark back to late 19th, early 20th century Johnny Walker. And the ABV has been bumped up here as well at 51%. As everyone knows, I kind of love this whiskey. Rob Halford pointed out that years ago he sent me a sample of this and I really didn't like it. I can only suggest that I was off, the sample was off, the bottle was off, a contaminated bottle, something odd or weird, because this is objectively beautiful whiskey. I think a lot of people are put off because it's Johnny Walker. This is just a remarkably well put together blend. And it's been down below £40 at some stages as well over the course of the last year. It was released in 2020 and there's still lots of it around. If you get it at a reasonable price, I would recommend that you pick it up. Regardless, that was in the blind. It went up alongside Craigellachie's 17-year-old. This was one of the more premium ones in the lineup here. You could argue push the boat out a wee bit on this one, because when you're buying 3 bottles of it, right, you need to spend a wee bit of money. But this 46% ABV, you might notice that this is a 750ml bottle. How can I show you here? There it is there. 750ml, because now that I've got none left on the shelf, Whisky takes care of things, and my pal Aaron Rao from San Francisco brought me a 750ml bottle. And he couldn't have timed it better, because obviously I'm out of Craigellachie 17 now. Now I've got a restock, a recharge. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, buddy. And that went alongside a Thompson Brothers release in collaboration with Royal Whiskies, a 33-year-old North British. This was called the Edinburgh Dram. Now look at the particularly low ABV on this. I don't know the story behind this. 40.1% ABV. It could be that that's the natural strength. Just very, very close. It needed to be casked. It needed to be bottled. It needed to get out of the cask and into a bottle. I mean, of course, they could vat it with other North British and with higher ABV and bring the ABV up again. But they were able to put this out there at £65 for a 33-year-old bottle of whiskey. And I know that you might be thinking that it's terrible, but I love the stuff. I know that at least one of our community really doesn't get on with grain, but I enjoy it. Also in the lineup was this, which you've seen on vPubs in the past, very recent past. This is the amazing, fully matured Clydeside 6 years in Oloroso, £42. This was our budget pick, the youngest whiskey in the lineup, and also the most inexpensive. And then another treat bottle. I went into Good Spirits Company with only a week or two to go, because I'd been looking everywhere I needed something with a little bit of peat in it. I was thinking about the Lefroy cast strength, simply because it was good value and things, but that just didn't sit right with me. I needed something that was softer, and it would have been nice if I could have got something a bit more mature as well. And wouldn't you know it, I managed to do that. I managed to find 3 bottles of this Living Souls 19-year-old Kildalton. It's obviously 19-year-old Ardbeg. It's £135 a bottle, but we have to remember what we're dealing with here. This is a little bit like the a little bit like the undisclosed Speyside distillery that's coming out as a Virtual Malt. People, you can't put on the label what this is, but everyone knows what it is, and people want to drink this liquid. It's also 19-year-old Islay Single Malt. £135. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous stuff. Some of the pleasure of drinking this might have been lost in that crowded environment, that crowded room, sipping it alongside all other whiskies and things. But I just thought the softness of the character was amazing. Anyway, let me share with you apologies. Just had to take a wee break to deal with a runny nose. Let me share with you how the whiskies fared. We'll start with last position here. Blue. Now the points are high. Nothing scored poorly here. So what happens is you work out, each team hands in the consensus from all of their team members through the team captain. And you can see that the team at the top here are the Alchemists. And they put green as their favourite, then followed by red, yellow, pink, and blue. And that means that green gets 5 points, red gets 4, yellow 3, pink 2, blue 1. And then I go along and I add up all the points for them all. Blue came in last place, and blue was Clydeside's Napier, the youngest one in the budget whiskey in the lineup. But it still scored very, very well with 34 points. And actually, three of our 15 teams picked a Napier as their favourite whiskey. So there's 3 teams out there that's going to be very pleased that they, as a team, they enjoyed that whiskey better than a Craigellachie 17, a Kildalton 19, a 33-year-old North British, so on and so forth, right? It's really quite nice to see that happening. Then the 33-year-old North British came in 4th place. There were only 2 teams that put the North British as their favourite. Being a grain whiskey, you would kind of expect it to struggle a little bit, but it still did very well, scoring 39 points. Pink in the middle. Pink was our Johnny Walker celebratory blend. 1 team actually picked that as their favourite, and it got 42 points. 2nd place was Craigellachie 17, 48 points. 4 teams picking red Craigellachie 17 as their favourite, and the winner, it's reasonably comfortable winner, 55 points on a day, with 5 teams putting it in 1st place, was the most expensive pick in the lineup. Interestingly, for the first time ever in a blind challenge, we're actually very, very close to most expensive to least expensive. In the past, we've seen that completely flipped. So we've got £135 here, 110 here, 52 here, 65, and then 42. More or less, that was the kind of prices of the lineup there. Just out of pure interest. Then, so just pause for a minute and think about this. There was a non-age statement in the lineup. The Johnny Walker is a non-age statement. But 4 of the whiskies, Napier, North British, Craigellachie, and Kildalton, all had an age statement. If you add up the age statements of those whiskies, the combined age is 75 years old. If I was to buy those whiskies today, just a flight and that was going to be my whiskey shelf, it would cost me £400 for 5 bottles of arguably really, really interesting premium whiskies. Once more, I put it to you that whiskey is coming back to us. The most expensive one was a 19-year-old Ardbeg at £135. We've got a 33-year-old there at £65. 6 years in Oloroso for £42 on the Napier. 17-year-old Craigellachie, you could argue, is the one that probably needs to come down in price the most, maybe £110 for a 17-year-old. That said, it's wonderful whiskey. Then you go to the bottle share. So we all break for food after the blind challenge is all over. By the way, I just want to give a shout out. The teams in joint 3rd place were the Settlers and the Mackenzies. So that was Andy Widowson's team and Conor Mackenzie's team had joint 3rd. 2nd place was the Uncles, which is Willie Dollier's team. Congratulations. In 1st place this year, knocking the crown off twice winners of the Alchemists. They were going for their hat trick this year. But no, the Novaks with Captain Stefan Novak took the plaudits this year. Neil Laverty was in the team. I mentioned Flora was part of it. She was in the team as well. But they managed 10 out of 10 right around the table, apart from one participant switched one thing and managed to only an 8 out of 10. They managed a score of 58 out of 60. We have never seen a score like that. Scores this year were very, very, very high. After this is all over and we celebrate, we had a wonderful toast. A wonderful toast. It's on the Aqvavitae Barflies page from Ben Whisky with Molly. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. We all go down and we have some food. That was probably the downside this year. There wasn't enough food. It's my fault. Usually after we all finish the blind, lots of people shoot off for trains and planes and cars and buses and whatever it may be. It didn't happen this year. Everyone wanted to stay and most of us stayed. So the food was just demolished. I will not make that mistake next year. There will be plenty of food to keep you entertained into the evening. But the bottle share happens after that. And the stuff that people were bringing to share was astonishing. And because we had some people, our friends from the industry coming along as well, purely on a friendship invite, they were rolling up their sleeves and getting involved with everyone else as well. The bottle shares that they were bringing were super interesting too. The whiskey that was being poured at that table was yet another example of whiskey's future. The confidence that we have to share these absolute gems, things that have been gathering dust at home. Now let's get this opened. Let's enjoy this. I'm ready for this. The examples of community, of sharing. I know the channel was founded way back in the day on the back of it's not whiskey until it's shared. But this is really important because we understand why we love the thing so much. We understand why we obsess about it, why it's our hobby, why it's so good at bringing people together. Lolinda is saying, we all saw you on the label on the new Aqvavitae release. Daisy's saying, evening Roy and Barfly slowly come down from the weekend's high. It was amazing to see everyone in person again. Daisy, you really made it something special too. It was wonderful to have you there. I won't tell the joke, the Daisy joke, that when I talked to her and made a point of making her feel as welcome as I possibly could. Big Paul is saying, don't remind me, Roy, I feel bad, but still on a personal note, improved from a 5 to an 8. Good for you, Neil. I wasn't aware. Are you suggesting that you're the one that ruined the perfect score? I mean, we can't be sad about a 58 out of a 60, Neil. Willie Dolier says that Kildalton was a belter. Glad you enjoyed it, Willie. Pick it up, a bottle, 135 quid. Good Spirits Company, I think I've still got stock. Ian Williamson is saying that Kildalton was lovely. It went down a treat. I'm looking forward to rinsing the rest of that bottle myself. Everyone is saying in some ways I'm tickled to hear how your meetups go, but so sad I cannot be a part of them, Chris. That's what I said at the opener of all of this, buddy. I hope that it's maybe possible one day. And if you can't get to Scotland, maybe I'll get the chance to go and cross your paths in the United States. Gervin was saying the haberdashery was a great place indeed. Fantastic. Matt Bishop saying the Ardmurchan crew seem to really enjoy their part in the barfly community. Well, they do. They're not there to sell. They're there to relax. They're us. I mean, you get the sense that a lot of people in the industry are whiskey geeks. Tom Lindsay's goodies were amazing, absolutely gobsmacking what that boy is making, I have to say. I've made a wee list of my kind of favourite drams over the course of the weekend. The 30-year-old Glenburgie, I couldn't believe there was any of this still available for me to sip. There was a 12-year-old Glengarry from Little Brown Dog with a kind of hand-drawn label on it, which I found it was one of the last drams I had of the day as well. Really tasty for a 12-year-old good value whiskey. But White Peaks Chevalier, the one he brought along, this was a Chevalier grain. It would be amazing if I could get some of that. Maybe not appropriate to use it, because for a vPub talking about grain, that would be a perfect example. But it was just so compelling. It was so thick, so full, so chewy. It was wonderful. But also, if we talk about how much the Ardmurchan crew is an example, Carol Crafts, Connell McKenzie, who came along just to play along with us for that day. Connell brought along a very, very special sample. He brought along a duty-paid bottle of Cask 412. I released Cask 411 and 413. And 413 and 412 were very, very similar. And we're backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. Which should we pick? And I preferred 412. But the consensus was 413. So I came back on my own and I had to make a call on it. And I decided that they were so close that I would go with the consensus rather than just kind of do what I normally do and steamroller my own choice through. So we went with 411 and 413. Great. Everyone asks what happened to 412 because we released 411 and 413, right? Well, excuse me. What happened to 412? We got to taste 412 now that it's practically 10 years old, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So on one hand, you're thinking I should have bottled this, but of course, no. I'm glad that it's survived, and I'm glad that it's gone on to blossom. And I gave Connell a little kind of nod and a wink please consider putting a wee paperclip in that one for us. I can't make any promises, but it was absolutely one of the drams of the entire weekend for me. Alistair McFeely said, Ardnamurchan guys, unofficial team names were funny and aimed lovingly at each other. There was a wee bit of head-to-head banter. We, of course, didn't let them get off lightly. They were both team captains. The Floaties and the Mackenzies. Andy Hales is saying, still dreaming about that 27-year-old Glengarry from Thompson Brothers on Friday. Thanks again for sneaking us in. Sadly, a bit rich price-wise for us. Glorious dram, nonetheless. But 27-year-old whiskey that you're able to enjoy, and it's not particularly expensive given the specs, of course. That, after 1 hour 45 minutes, not bad for a phone and vPub. That was the Glasgow weekend. Let me finish on one suggestion to you. Where have I put my bottle? It's just a wee bit out of reach, but I can get there. Excuse me a moment. In a couple of weeks' time, on the 27th of this month, we will celebrate 8 years of the vPub. Now, I don't really do anniversaries. I think the last time I did an anniversary was back when the vPub turned 3 years old. That was during the pandemic years, of course. But we're now quite a few years down the road. We're 8 years down the road. And as everyone knows, I collaborated with Glasgow to bring out this beautiful golden whiskey. An 8-year-old whiskey to celebrate 8 years of the vPub, 55% ABV. And look, this is my second bottle. I'm already here on this. I implore you, anyone that's bought a bottle of this, please enjoy it on your first dram. It's going to be very communicative straight out the bottle. But like no other whiskey I've released, this thing gets better and better and better as you build a bit of a relationship with it. With that said, for all of you, and I need to work out the mechanics for this, for all of you that picked up a bottle of this, I'm going to work out some kind of community-themed, kind of mild party type thing to celebrate 8 years of the vPub in a couple of weeks' time. But anyone that's bought a bottle of this, for that night, if you can be predisposed to raise a dram of this simultaneously, globally, wherever you are at the same time in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to ask you to do that, but also be in a position to share a little snap. A snap of the glass, snap of the bottle in the glass, a snap of you in the bottle, you in the glass, you in the bottle in the glass, however you want to do it. Wherever you are, I'm going to put a little online repository so that you can upload that photo live in the moment to a link. And we'll do that live throughout the night. And we'll see how many pictures we can collect. 10, a dozen, 15, maybe 20, maybe 2 dozen. I don't know. Try and all render this virtual thing real by sipping, as many of us as possible, the same whiskey at the same time to celebrate 8 years of the vPub. If you're willing, I think that would be nice to do it. And what I can do is as the photos upload, I can have a look at them and I can attempt to share wherever you are. Maybe if you're in Canada, there'll be some little kind of nod to a maple leaf in the picture, or stars and stripes if you're in America, or some, I don't know, some bratwurst if you're in Germany, some I don't know, you can go crazy, just something that shows us where this image is coming in from, just to give us that sense that we captured over the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend, that this is a global community. And it's fabulously varied, robust, warm and welcoming, and all the better for it to. I think that would be magical. Doodle Drama saying Andy Hill sniping that Craigellachie must have felt like a renewal of his wedding vows to Helen. Glasgow is producing wonderful liquid, says Jean Kelly. Absolutely, Gene. I hope you had a chance to connect with it while you were here. Gerben is saying, I bought one to divide among the Dutch barflies and will ask them to do that. Falscraft is saying it is redundant, but this may be the moment to at least once again deliberate the fact that this liquid we are getting around seems to be bring really good people together. It really does, Klaus. It really does. I don't know how to recognize it anymore. It's like whiskey. It must be. Is it an open-mindedness that's attracted by whiskey? Is it a? Danny Hebbington is saying, I've had 3 of your 1770s tonight, my friend. It's excellent, even from the first ram. I've always trusted your judgment, and that's why I bought 2. Thank you, Danny. There's a good chance then that you'll be here to upload a wee picture in a couple of weeks' time. Whiskey with Molly, some battered pizza if you're in Glasgow. That's perfect, Ben. Right on theme. Grain and Malt is saying, got one of my bottles here in Sweden and I'm on it. The second one was left in my stash, but I kept Peter's for next time. Jason Harris is saying, cheers, glad I could finally catch a live Aqvavitae. What bourbon cask shelf bottle would you recommend to a novice to bourbon cask finished Scotch? I usually reach for sherry cask peated Scotch. Jason, I would say that be careful with the word finished and matured. If it's matured in bourbon cask, it tends to be, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about bourbon cask. That bourbon cask finishing can happen, but generally speaking, bourbon cask maturation. A finish tends to be something that will go into a more active cask for a final amount of time or a secondary maturation or something like that. And that's when we call a finish, when it's been in another cask. But the question, to answer the question that you're asking, I would say I pick up from you that maybe you're quite early. And one of my staples of a bourbon cask, I'll give you a few more natural examples too, but one of my staples would be Glenmorangie's 12-year-old. It's a 12-year-old now. Where you are, it might still be a 10-year-old that's on the shelf. There's very little difference in it. There is a bit of an uptick with a 12-year-old, but if you can only get the 10-year-old, that's a good one to start with. 40 or 43% ABV, depending on where you are. If you want something a bit more natural, a bit more full, unchill filtered, things like that, I recommend it. It would be Glencadam's 10-year-old, a peach, and Deanston's super reliable 12-year-old. That's my bourbon cask recommendation for you. Jason, nice to have you in. One Glassman is saying it's like a Miami-style pick with a Loch Lomond 10. I'll take a Miami-style pick with a Loch Lomond 10. Because you might not have bought or you might not have delivered yet the Glasgow Warner. Ian Bruce is saying, hello, Ryan. Barflies from Perth. Introduced a few people to Loch Lomond yesterday at a golf course event, and it was well received. Fantastic. I wonder if it was an Aqvavitae one, Ian. And Anthony Lambert is saying, sorry, Roy, but Finn's Glasgow bottling was more my thing. Lots of peat and sherry. I do try to connect with bourbon cask, but it doesn't float my boat. Unfortunately, that's fine. I think, Anthony, that you're going to pick up on my theme on everything I've released, not just the Glasgow. Is going to lean much more to the kind of, I could have gone peated on Glasgow, bourbon cask peated. They've brought out their own 8-year-old bourbon cask peated, by the way. I could have gone sherry, I could have gone, but there was no, from day one, it was always going to be that. Same as the Loch Lomond, same as the Daft Mill, same as the Ardnahove, same as and the refills from Ardnamurchan. And there's nothing wrong with gorgeous wood influence, right? To give us variety. But I want to explore. I want to give us a grounding, an anchor, a foundation. And that's what that is. Each their own, Anthony. We're all still welcome in each other's company, raising glasses, right, buddy? Cheers. Is that some of James's mulled licorice? I can spy on the back shelf. If it is, I'm sure would all love to see you taste one on air. This is actually chocolate. Chocolate from Drew, chocolate from Alberto. And I don't want to be, it's bad enough that I'm blocked up and sneezing, coughing and sniffling, Arnie, without me chewing into the microphone as well. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with me. We are going to move into a quiz at the end. I don't get to have a short vPub. I don't get to ever finish a vPub, I think, without a quiz at the end. But I'm still feeling okay. I managed to get through a vPub, and that means a lot. It really does. literally this time last night, I wasn't going to have a vPub tonight. I just didn't feel like it. I was so blocked up, so miserable. But no, I realised that I didn't need to taste and nose whiskies tonight. I could talk about whiskies that I've already tasted and nosed, and talk about the whiskies that I'd shared with you at the weekend, and I think it was a nice wee thing for us to all do. For all of you, like Chris Everwind, for all the people that haven't yet made it to an event, wherever it may be, keep your fingers crossed for the possibilities that the future might bring. It just might be the case that you're able to do so. And when that happens, I think you might be surprised, as Klaus has already pointed out, just how fantastic a community of people that we have. It is really something that we need to be grateful about and preserve for the future. Andy Hells is saying that licorice was epic, Aqvavitae. And thanks for toughing it out on the vPub, says Mike Molasses. I wasn't toughing it out, my goodness. I don't want to make it sound like I'm a trooper. I've been sitting here in a bar stool drinking whiskey. It's hardly a tough gig, right? Gene Kelly, Aqvavitae boss man. Thank you, Gene. All right. Thank you all. Glasgow was resplendent. It was wonderful, and it was made all the better by each and every one of you that came along. And I guarantee that each of one of you that didn't, you're very much still part of it all and the possibilities in the future as well. If you're up for staying for the quiz at the end, please join us. Have a bit of fun. Hang out. If you're leaving, please don't leave without leaving a wee like. It seems to matter to YouTube. It matters less to me. I don't really care much. But YouTube tends to enjoy the high like ratio of videos and uses it as a marker of trust that it's genuine content, I think. Greg is saying, thanks, Roy. I hope to make it someday. But something else was organised for me this year to celebrate my 60th anniversary. We'll keep you posted if I make it soon. Of course, buddy, and it's inevitable. It's not a question of how or if, it's a question of when. Here's your quiz, always multiple choice. Starts off easy, gets harder. Watch out for banana skins and ass hats. Follow the crowd if you want, but the most important thing is to have fun. You're only ever playing against yourself. Graham Fraser is celebrating being a barfly for 67 months, and congrats to my teammates in Team Newt. And but Team Newt, Graham Fraser? Obviously you're referring to a different team. I mean, obviously you were in the blind, but there wasn't a Team Newt, and I might be a bit lost there. And Brian Cabales is saying, is celebrating being a member for 22 months, and saying, I hope everyone is well and had a great Glasgow Whisky Festival. Thank you, Brian. It's wonderful to have you, and thank you for your support as a barfly, you and Graham. All right, everyone. Nice and easy to start with, surely. Question 1. Which of the following whisky brands has been under the ownership of a luxury goods brand this century? We're looking for something that's been under the ownership of a luxury goods brand. A, Glenmurray, B, Glenmorangie, or C, Glenturret? Luxury goods ownership. Ah, yeah. There is a little bit of aniseed on my Glasgow tonight. Don't know if that's just the power of suggestion. Everywhere. Sticks 191. I live in hope, Aqvavitae. One day I'll get there. We'll hope along with you, Sticks. Be nice to welcome you in Glasgow or somewhere. Stefan Newitt? No, Stefan Novak, Graham Fraser. Yes. Your team captain on the day was Stefan Novak, N-O-W-A-K. Unless there's an insider there. You could have said this millennium. Says Falsgraf. Spot on. Anthony Lambert, BA, first love of my life. Billy Abbott is suggesting that it's all three. Nice to see you in, Billy. It's nice to see you participating in the quiz, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. Be nice to welcome you up in Glasgow once for the festival. Be nice to have a bit of fun, Billy. When will we see you next? Billy, but you're absolutely spot on. Glenturret is Lalique. Glenmorangie is Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy, of course. But once upon a time, alongside Ardbeg, Glenmurray was also a member of that portfolio. It's now owned by La Martiniquais, of course, but once upon a time, Glenmurray was also LVMH. Everybody gets a freebie to start this vPub off. Nobody's going home with a zero on this phoned-in vPub. Which of the following distilleries has a malt floor installed? A. Ardnamurchan, B. Ardnahoe, C. Ardmore. Andy Hells, Aqvavitae, a 10 for this Craigellachie 17-year-old. He picked out the Craigellachie 17 in the blind challenge, called it out blind. Arnie called out the Napier, and believe it or not, he also called out the Edinburgh Dram, North British 33-year-old. Incredible, incredible scenes. Who else managed to call out drams? I feel really bad for forgetting people that were calling them out successfully. Cousin Kevin. Don't think I can catch you out on this one. Gerben is right. Cousin Kevin did one. He absolutely did. I can tell you, spot on. You're not quite right. A. Ardnamurchan absolutely have, as of yet, still to be put into action, a malt floor at the distillery there. So the Pagoda roof, theoretically, is actually an operational Pagoda roof. But as of yet, it's unused. Question 3. How many years are there between the founding years of next-door neighbours Manachmore and Glenlossie? This is quite a tricky one for question 3, Roy. Anyway, Manachmore and Glenlossie almost butt right up against each other. They're on the same site, owned by Diageo, of course. But in terms of founding years, how many years are between the founding year of one and the other? I can tell you that Glenlossie came first, Manachmore second. A, 5 years between them. B, 25 years between them. Or C, 95 years between them. Andy's saying Aqvavitae nearly ran around the room waving my shirt over my head, but thought better of it, little. I think it lasts longer if you keep it to yourself, if you keep it quiet, right? And you're entitled maybe to gloat at home a wee bit longer as well. 10 out of 10 on the quiz and getting the Craigellachie 17 spot on as well. Fully blind, we should add. Where's Roy's in tonight? It was great to have him in Glasgow. Ian Williamson, of course. Ian and Helen were both in Glasgow. First time I've been able to meet Ian and Helen, actually. Great fun it was too. I think Ian and Helen, you managed to make it to all of the events. No gloating here. Honest, says Andy Hills. Helen tells it differently. James Morgan is saying 1876, I believe. And Manachmore was 1971. Glenlossie was 1876, so it is indeed 95 years between the two distilleries. C is the correct answer. Let's roll into question 4. Which of the following have been under the exclusive stewardship of Edrington over the last 15 years? We're looking for brands owned by Edrington. A, the famous grouse. B, Glenrothes. Or C, Highland Park. Please make sure that you read the question for this one. What's she been saying in my absence? That you might be pointing out your successes of the weekend occasionally, which is your right to do so. I'm just going to wait on Whiskey with Molly changing his mind. There we go. We can proceed. The famous grouse is been under exclusive stewardship of Edrington up until recently when they've sold it to William Grant's Glenrothes. Has been under the ownership and stewardship of Edrington, but of course it spent a number of years from 2010 and I think until 2017 under the stewardship of Berry Brothers, but Highland Park has always remained within their stable and it's never changed. So C is the answer to that one. Edrington move their brands around like chess pieces at times, it feels like. Question 5. Here's a view of, believe it or not, a distillery. And I'm going to ask you 3 things. The distillery that we're looking at, A, is a legendary or had a legendary core lineup of a 12-year-old, 17-year-old, and a 21-year-old, long lamented and long discontinued. Or is it B, this distillery is actually one of the original classic malts? Or is it C, a distillery that's currently under Japanese ownership? I'm actually feeling better than I have been. Maybe it's the whiskey, like we always say. Is there anything it can't do? I can't catch out with this one either. Are we seeing the Roman Colosseum? Ask Fernando. It does look kind of Colosseum-like, doesn't it? I can tell you that that is actually a genuine thing that's built up the top of the hill. It's actually called Battery Hill, McCaig's Tower it's called, and it's a folly. It was supposedly built to keep stonemasons in work over the course of the winters, but it was a folly, and once the guy behind it passed away, it was never fully finished. It was supposed to be even much more grand than that. But we are looking at Oban. So it's not, I was leading you towards Old Pulteney, the 12, 17 and 21-year-old. And it's not Ben Nevis. It's actually B, as of course Oban with its 14-year-old was once a classic malt. Hopefully you're all in good shape with 5 out of 5. Pretty easy quiz so far. I'm predicting a 10 tonight. Danny Heavens is saying, aye, a wee bit of fire water works wonders. It does. A wee bit of the water of life, right? Question 6. Of the top 5, everything's going to get trickier from here on in, you know that, right? Of the top 5 best-selling single malt brands globally, how many of the distilleries in that lineup are Glens? How many distilleries in the top 5 best-selling malt brands globally are Glens? A, just the 2. B, actually 3. C, surprisingly, 5. Clearly, it's our healing presence, says Mike Molasses. Well, if that's the case, Mike, I'll raise a toast to you all and thank you very much for your healing qualities this evening. This Glasgow's Danger Whiskey, I love this stuff. Fruit bomb. There's a banana skin. There's a banana skin. There's a banana skin. There's a banana skin. Dave VP, nice to see you. And you're going to be raging with me. Cal Taylor is saying, oh, wait, it's 3. Okay, so Blee then says Daisy. Be with some trepidation. Lolander Aqvavitae unplugged. Sorry, I'm singing out. I'm enjoying this. Anthony Lambert is saying Glenlivet, Glenmorangie, Glenfiddich. Okay, let's put you all out your misery. Rob Smith, there's a banana skin. The top 5 top-selling malt brands are Glenfiddich and Glenlivet at the top, typically exchanging blows, but it's usually Glenfiddich at the top, followed by Macallan. And then in 4th place, we have Glenmorangie. And then in 5th, we have the Singleton. Would you like a moment to change your mind, anyone? Lachlan comes in clutch. Fernando backs him up. Look at what's happening here. Oh my goodness. I'm really trying to lead you. I would like you all to have a good score this evening. The top 5 brands are supported by Glenmorangie, of course, Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, Glendullan, and Glenord. 5 Glen distilleries in the top 5 top-selling brands. Of course, the Singleton is made up from Duffton, Glenord, and Glendullan, and that is the banana skin in that question. Hopefully, you made it through unscathed. Question 7. The joint top-selling single malt brands are also the largest distilleries by volume at 21 million litres per annum. In 2010, however, when Glenfiddich was at 10 million litres per annum, what size was Glenlivet? This is just a remarkable question, even though it reads quite complex as a question, because it measures just the sheer, it's not just about the amount of brands and things that have scaled up over the last 20 or so years. The legacy brands have really gone crazy. We're talking about in 2010, Glenfiddich was 10 million litres per annum, and now it's 21 million litres. The other joint biggest distillery by volume is also the joint top best-selling malt, and that's Glenlivet. It is also 21 million litres per annum in 2025. But back in 2010, when Glenfiddich was 10 million litres per annum, what size was Glenlivet? Glenlivet in 2010 was oddly small and actually less than 6 million litres per annum. Or B, Glenlivet was almost the same size as Glenfiddich at 9.8 million litres per annum. Or C, actually, back then, Glenlivet was bigger at 12 million litres per annum. It was large, says Rob Smith. Wow. Gerben. Some tricky questions tonight, right? DVDW's in, saying C. Good to see you, buddy. Gorm J is back again, saying A. And Lolander is in, playing along at the end, saying C. Glenn FC is here as well. Good to see you, Klaus. Daisy is asking A. Huh. Wow. Splitting the room. I can tell you that in 2010, Glenlivet was already mature and making its capacity much bigger, trying to expand from being a 5.8 million litre facility. Back in that time, it was much, much smaller than Glenfiddich, and it was 5.8 million litres. Well done, Gerben Blocker. He had the information on hand. Not sure where he got it from, but he was spot on. So the answer was A here. Glenlivet has now quadrupled in size in the last 15 or so. No, it's, 16 years. But I have to say, this is capacity. It might not be what the distillery is actually operating at, of course. Sorry, I need a wee pause. Apologies, we're almost there. We're almost at the end. My head is starting to hurt a little bit now. Question 8, how many distilleries were lost in the Great Distillery Cull between 1981 and 1986? There were loads of these, and I actually tried to find them all, but it's for another day. How many distilleries did we lose between 81 and 86? We lost A, 9 distilleries. We lost B, 13 distilleries. Or C, we lost 23 distilleries. As you know, I tend to lean heavily on the Malt Whisky Yearbook. So if you buy Ingvar's guide every year, you've got a good chance of improving your performance in the quiz at the end. And this indeed is a fact from the Malt Whisky Yearbook 2026. Well, and there are too many, he's saying. Yeah. Of course. If we're not careful, we could end up in a similar position in the future. There's nothing, says Fernando, that a hot toddy can't cure. 3 times a day and you'll be 100%. I have to say, I come from generations of people that believe the very same thing, Fernando. It's not a practice I do at home myself. I tend to just let things run their course. I don't know if it's wise or not. Ben Whiskey with Molly saying Glenlivet, the new plant incorporating 6 new stills and 8 washbacks, was officially opened in June 2010 and increases the Glenlivet's capacity to over 10 million litres per annum. That's absolutely true. But it was before that. So if we are saying, and I think Billy Abbott would probably agree with you there, Ben, so you might be helpful to Billy too, because he went B on the last question. If you want to take that, that's absolutely true. I read differently that if you're saying it was officially opened in 2010, I read that the expansion was in 2010, but it didn't happen immediately. But it was 5.8 million before that. Anybody that answered B on the last question, thanks to Ben, you're absolutely welcome to take the points as well. I displaced my Malt Whisky Yearbook today. Oh dear, Falsgraf, you can't do such a thing. I can tell you all, as you've quite rightly picked out, we lost 23 malt whisky distilleries over the course of the mid-80s, from 81 to 86. I was trying to count them all up. I used a few different kind of resources for it, and I got up to 19, but I was struggling to find, the other 4. So I'll probably do that when I've got a wee bit more time. But nevertheless, according to the Malt Whisky Yearbook, that number is 23. Well done for all of you guys for knowing that. Question 9. Before the first new distilleries appeared in the 1990s, what was the last new distillery to be built and opened in Scotland? So we're talking about the new wave distilleries. We usually start at Arran in 1985, but of course Speyside came along in 1990, 1991. But before that, what was the last distillery to be built? Was it A, a Speysider, currently owned by Chivas Brothers? Was it B, a Highlander, currently owned by Diageo? Or was it C, a Speysider, currently owned by Diageo? If Billy Abbott says it's right, I'm taking it. Ben, I think you should just take it. Billy Abbott is going 6 to 7/8. I love the ambiguity. The rules on the quiz at the end, well, we'll never fall out over this stuff. Based on me making a mistake by how I pose the question, or me getting facts wrong, or some ambiguity of any kind, makes it either a freebie for everyone, or you putting a case forward to be able to just take the point, and you deserve the point for the effort. It's all supposed to be fun. Billy is saying, I thought the first expansion was earlier than 2010. The first new distillery, before the new wave started in the 1990s, or sorry, the last new distillery to be built and opened in Scotland, was a Speyside that's currently owned by Chivas, a Highlander currently owned by Diageo, or a Speyside currently owned by Diageo. I can tell you that it's Altavania and Speyside, and Altavania is owned by Chivas Brothers. Pernod Ricard. 1975, and there was nothing built for 20 years, unless you include Speyside, of course. That started in the 1960s and wasn't opened and operational until 1990. But there you go. Moving to the ass hat at the end, how are the scores doing? How many 9 out of 9s do we have? Cal Taylor on a 7, fantastic. Daisy on an 8. Herben is on for a 9 tonight. Petehead is on a 7, and Whiskey with Molly's on a 9. Peter Buck's on a 7, Gene Kelly on an 8. Couple more 9s coming in. Lachlan Mackenzie, a grain of malt. Lowlander on a 9 out of 9. Rob Smith on a 9 out of 9. Ian Bruce. Andy Hells. Your grain of malt, James. I think I mentioned Lachlan Mackenzie, didn't I? Quite a few of you in the running. Fantastic. Okay, here we go. The ass hat at the end is a bit of an ass hat. How many new Scotch malt distilleries were added to this year's 2026 Malt Whiskey Yearbook? When I'm talking about added this year, that is on top of the 2025 Malt Whiskey Yearbook, of course. How many new malt whiskey distilleries, Scotch malt whiskey distilleries, were added in this year's yearbook? About the same numbers. About the same as the number of A distilleries on Skye and Rassay combined. About the same as the number of B brands co-hosting at the 2025 Glasgow Under the Table event. For those of you who were here earlier, of course, we would have shared this. Or let's see if I can get this out without being tongue-tied. C, about the same as the number of years of age stated on the oldest bottled Kingsbarns to date. So what does it match up? Number of new distilleries added over last year. Does it match up to the same as the number of distilleries on Skye and Rassay? Or the number of brands that co-hosted the Under the Table tasting on the Friday of the Glasgow Whisky Festival events weekend? Or was it the same as the number of years on the oldest age stated bottled by Kingsbarns to date? Rob Smith is saying, I'm thinking C. Ian Williamson is going with B. And Pete Ed is suggesting some self-indulging, so B. Pass to B. Jimmy Jazz is going B. Falscraft is saying not B, so C. Peter Box is going C. Desi of Leland, Willie Dollier, and Jesper Bach. Good to see you, Jesper. And Nicholas is also going B. DVD W, B. Random Guess. Brian Gabais, B. Lowlander, B. Let's see if I can help you here by revealing the answers, making it a bit easier for you. There are 3 distilleries over Skye and Rassay, Torrevik, Talisker, and Isle of Rassay, of course. Brands co-hosting at the 2025 Glasgow Under the Table event, I already explained to you. We had Cadenheads, we had Glen Scotia, we had Adelphi, we had Glengyle, we had Arnahoe, we had Decadent Drinks, and the Thompson Brothers. That makes out the 7. Years of age stated on the oldest bottled Kingsbarns to date is their 10-year-old. Petehead is suggesting on question 9 there were 2 built in 1975. Altavania and Pittivake. Pittivake, I think we can all agree, yes, it was a distillery, but it was kind of a bolt-on in Dufton, right? It was just bolted on the side. But regardless, Altavania was the last one. Okay, everyone, I can tell you, and this is going to be happiness for some. There are, believe it or not, it's unyielding, it's incessant, they just keep coming. In 2026, there were 10 more new distilleries added to the 2026 Malt Whisky Yearbook. They are Ardgowan, Benbecula, Kythe, Lagan Bay, North Uist, Crafty, Ben Cumnall, Dearness, Blackness Bay, and Tulvaddy. 10. Whiskey with Molly is taking it. As is your right, Ben. Andy Hells has got a 10 out of 10. Fantastic, superb. Lowlander is saying, no, he's on a 9. Maybe the asshat at the end is taking the wind out of Lowlander. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry. Lachlan McKenzie is celebrating a 10. I'm going to get to gloat again this evening, says Andy Hells. Another 10. Great stuff. Ian Bruce is on a 10. Thanks to Ben for the Glenfiddich. Fernando hit asshat, but short to 10. He's on a 9 out of 10. Fernando, very, very close. Kythe, that's not a real distillery. Ah, dear. Only Billy could get away with saying such a thing. Graham Fraser is celebrating a 10 out of 10 as well. Of course, Graham, fantastic. Well done to all you 10s, says Ian Williamson. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Well done, everyone who managed the 10 out of 10. Congratulations, despite the awkwardness and the silliness and the clumsiness. And to be honest with you, I'm amazed they even get through the quiz at the end because I'm feeling it right now. My eyes are streaming. My nose is blocked. My head and my eyes are feeling it too. I've got a wee bit of a headache, but I can sort that. What the dram doesn't take care of, a wee paracetamol before bed. Well, I'm glad I didn't cancel tonight. I'm glad I stood here and celebrated and talked to all of you about what a wonderful weekend we had and how we intend to do that going forward as well. I want to remind everyone that in a couple of weeks' time to celebrate 8 years of the vPub, it would be wonderful to have as many of you as possible to be celebrating that bottle with me, uploading your pictures and just seeing how many pictures we can get uploaded to all be sipping the same dram at the same time. I'm looking forward to everything that's ahead of us in whiskey. That was the takeaway from all these events that I hosted on the Friday, the festival itself on the Saturday, and then hosting again on a Sunday. Everything was just super positive about the now and the future. It depends on your perspective in whiskey, but if you're amongst us, our community, the enthusiast, the drinker, the sipper, the people who has a selection over a collection potentially, the people who love to share, who love to talk about, who love to make this a hobby that can connect people and bring people together, I think this is a true golden era, and whiskey is once more coming back to us. As I quickly catch anything that would be embarrassing to remain on screen. Gorm J is saying thank you for tonight and hope you get well soon. Thank you, Gorm. And Graham Young is saying thanks for roughing it out with us tonight. Cheers and get well, Roy. Thank you very much, Graham. Get some rest, Roy, but the community helps too. See you next time and good night, everyone. Thanks for the entertainment. I agree with you, Klaus. The community does help. Jean Kelly is saying you're the best, Aqvavitae. Thank you so much, Jean. I think actually you're the best. I loved having your happy aura with us all weekend, last weekend. Peter Lee saying, get well soon, mate. You've earned a well-deserved rest. Thank you, buddy. Tell my wife and family the same, Peter. Will you? Greg's Whisky Guide is saying, you didn't mention which dram to celebrate the 8 years, did you? Yes, it's the 8-year-old Glasgow, the one that's been released to celebrate 8 years of the vPub, Greg. I know it can be tough for everybody to get. I don't even know if they're shipping to France. Maybe there will be some quick sample shares that go on and things. Maybe the Barflies page would be good. I don't know if it's dangerous to do that on the Barflies page, actually. But yeah, but if you can't manage that and you just want to bring along another 8-year-old or another Glasgow, whatever it may be, Greg, you'd be very welcome. Ian Williamson is saying, hope you're feeling better very soon, Roy. Thanks for persevering this evening. It's been a blast to relive the amazing weekend. Thank you so much, Ian. Thanks to you and Helen. Well done, Roy, for turning up on your deathbed, Danny. It's not quite there. It's a mark of how you bring us together. Long trips away just makes it more great to get home. It's nice to have you home, Danny. It's wonderful to have you back. Peter is saying, time to hit the sack and sleep away the sniff. Thanks as always for organising Aqvavitae. Get well soon to all the sniffers. And thanks to all of you. See you next time. Slanchava. Thank you, Pete Head Frank. And Whisky with Will Ben is saying, praying for your man flu, Aqvavitae. Daisy is saying, this is just what I needed tonight. Thanks for toughing it out tonight, Roy. Get well soon, Daisy. Best of health. And I don't know when the next time we'll see you. We'll maybe be Limburg next year. Maybe be the Independent Spirits Festival. Fernando's saying vPub Roy Aqvavitae. So, fantastic vPub Roy. So good you to joining you after a week. Quick recovery for you. Good night, everyone. See you next week. Thank you, Fernando, so much. Super, my first ever 10. Thanks, Aqvavitae. Herman, celebrate it. Take it. It's your new standard going forward. Daisy saying Leith, of course. I'll see you in Leith. And Chris Pollack is saying, thank you, Roy. Get well soon and see you next time. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to raise a wee glass and I'm going to thank you for hanging out with me despite my sniffles and my blocked head and everything. Thank you for letting me phone in a vPub tonight and still have a wonderful time doing it. I'm going to raise this wee glass to remind you all that you are indeed very dearly loved. I look forward to hanging out with you again next week. And until then, when I hope we're all feeling better, literally, Slanchava. Cheers.